Welcome to Chronic Curiosity, where real people have real conversations. From anything to everything, and sometimes nothing. But if you enjoyed the show, we'd ask that you would make sure to follow, subscribe, do all the things that you're supposed to do, but more importantly, share it with a friend and get the word out there. We love interacting and communicating with everybody, different ideas, opinions, and thoughts to have real conversations. If you want to support the show, tell your friends. Or you can also go on the website, chronic-curiosity.com. You can donate there in USD or Bitcoin, or you can also pick yourself up a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, a hat, even a coffee mug with Bitcoin or USD to support the show. Hope you enjoy. And here we go. Down at the bottom right.
Yeah, so we should probably do an introduction.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, well, introduce. He's your buddy.
Yeah, this
Are we on?
This is
Yeah, I
my
think we're on.
friend Jake Saul. Jake, say hello to everyone.
Hello, world.
It sounds so formal.
Bye, cruel world.
All of those, the 100 million listeners out there.
Yeah,
About to
maybe
hear.
it's something like that.
Not yet.
Getting close.
Not,
Yeah.
like 5.5, but it's
Yeah.
okay. There's a few midgets that like us.
Yeah, yeah, 5.5 people total. 5.5.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm the half person every now and then.
Shoot.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. I think I told you this, Tony. I had that. I not met a guy. I known him for a while, but just randomly talking to him, he was like, we had a guy on just recently, CJ, who was his book's right there.
Yeah.
But
Check that out.
we had him on just after Veterans Day. He just put that book out. He was a veteran that got hit by an IED in
Is this him?
Iraq. Yeah. So he's a professional bodybuilder, but he's
he's taking over David Goggins' role.
yeah,
Gotta
he
be
got
careful.
he got pretty messed up. At one point, they said that he was probably never going to walk again. And then when he did, like he was like always down to like 135 pounds when he got out of the hospital. He was in the hospital for like 9 months. And
Damn, dude.
but yeah, so he was on. He was like, hey, he's like, how do you know CJ? And there was just a guy completely disconnected from. I had no idea. I was like, I said, well, I know him from this. I was like, how do you know him? He's like, well, I used to coach like little league football with him. I'm like, no kidding, like small world. And he told me they got a chance to do a game during one of the Browns like halftime games with a bunch of like first graders. They took a bunch of first graders out to play football like during the halftime of like an actual football game. He's like,
That's pretty legit.
I was like,
Yeah.
that'd be really sweet.
That's cool.
That'd be wild.
He's got real stories then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said he was on the show?
Yeah, he's been on
Yeah,
twice.
he's been on
That's
twice.
awesome.
Yeah.
So first time without the book and second time with the book.
I'll have to dig those up.
Yeah, it's he's got a pretty harrowing story,
I
that's for
bet.
sure. But
It was something. Well, hey, tell us what you do, man, vocational wise.
Yeah, no, I'm like I said, I'm one of those average Americans, if you will, from a story standpoint. Grew up in a small town called Napoleon, Ohio. Went through high school. Parents were the type that just wanted you to focus on being successful at sports and schools. You could say I grew up a little spoiled, even if my dad can be an asshole, they at least paid for everything and they did some good stuff. 5 boys, putting us all through sports and school was pretty legit. And I joke with my folks, like all 5 of us, nobody got anybody pregnant in high school. Nobody got arrested. Nobody's on drugs. All of us are only semi-alcoholics. So I always say to my parents, I'm like, I know a lot of families and that's pretty hard to do, to get 3 or 5 boys through life fairly straight. Or at least what the definition of normal and straight would be. I don't mean sexual orientation. I meant like straight through without getting in any trouble.
Straight and narrow.
yeah.
Everybody's got jobs. Everybody's married. 4 of us have kids. Greg shouldn't have kids, and I don't think he will. So it's just kind of interesting because they were the type of parents that are just very hands off. They pushed you to do the sports and school, and it's kind of like to a detriment at some point because it was just such a you went to college, get through college, get good grades, get a good job. I mean, it's literally your textbook, do life this way and you'll be successful. And what is successful, And that's where Tony and I kind of joke. We're all at a place in this world and in life where it's like, I don't know what is successful anymore. I don't know what it means. I don't even, because it's not about money and it's not about job like it used to be. Like, unfortunately, I used to probably think that making good money and having nice things was the definition of success, and it's not. I mean, I still do it. You know, I have thousands of dollars worth of bourbon in my basement, so I
Yeah.
still.
Let me speak to that though, because I think this goes back to something I always refer to, that longitudinal study that they did at Harvard. It was over the course of like 70 years. And, you know, a lot of people thought the initial thing that you said, you know, the money, the having things. And, you know, once they hit that $70,000 mark, they said, you know, $70,000 a year is pretty good.
Yeah,
It was.
Well, yeah. Now about 170,000.
Yeah.
just for your basic
Right,
necessities.
right. But what they found was that you know, kind of what people said where they felt success was meaningful relationships. And so we joke about your thousands of dollars worth of bourbon, or that we don't know what success is. But I think it's this right here. It's sitting down and having these conversations and those meaningful relationships where, you know, it's not, hey, I've got this bourbon, or hey, I've got this car, this house, or anything like that. It's, hey, I can pick up the phone and, you know, what's going on with your life? Like, I genuinely care about you and your kids. You care about me and my kids. We care about, you know, our civic duties in the community.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's really about, at least for me, meaningful relationships. You know, I know for you, you don't just sit there and drink your bourbons alone. You share those bourbons, and it facilitates conversations and laughter. This thing right here has built, you know, all kinds of amazing conversations, reached other people, brought a lot of people that you didn't know that have become friends, people that you brought to me that have become friends. So for me, and probably for you, and I'm not saying, you know, unanimously across the board, it's just meaningful relationships. But I think if we were going to focus on one thing, probably meaningful relationships would be a level of success.
Yeah, the bourbon thing, I like the bourbon tastes. I like to play with it, but 100%, I don't do any of it. I don't ever make any money off of it. I don't sell it to people for a profit. I just try to, you know, like you said, use it for camaraderie. And like even yesterday, a friend of mine from Kentucky was in town, and I'm still able to buy that old, or the Weller 107, the antique 107. I can still get it at Buehler's at retail. In other states, it's like $180 a bottle or $200 a bottle. It's $55 in Ohio if you can find it. Buehler's makes you buy one bottle at a time. And so I just keep I probably have 20 of those, or at least I had 20. I've found a lot of people very much interested, and my boss bought like 4 from me and took them back to Georgia. This guy coming through Kentucky bought 3 last night, and I was like, I don't care. I'm just happy to like he said, he's doing the same thing. He's got family that enjoy it, so he takes it to holidays, and he can be that guy that brings a cool bottle. And we all refuse to kind of pay over retail except for a couple of times.
And then what's that doing too? Like, you helped him facilitate more meaningful relationships as well.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing it. That's why I can't stand being on those Facebook pages that people, you can tell they go to Buehler's in the morning and then they post pictures of stuff and they're trying to sell it for
Taters, truck chasers.
yeah,
flippers.
even some people they're selling them for $10 more than they paid for it. They're just trying to churn and burn.
Scalpers.
Yeah, and so maybe people don't know that. Maybe explain a little bit behind, you know, bourbon and allocations, and that there's a secondary market and what people do.
Yeah, I mean they'll wait in line at Buehler's or OHLQ because in Ohio they control the liquor. I don't know. You guys know this. They control liquor prices. So the state of Ohio owns all the liquor in Ohio. And then
I don't know that, so I'm assuming other people don't know
that.
that.
People
so
will not know that.
all right.
explain
Yeah,
that a little bit
That's why I want you to, and I'll
for us
too,
uneducated.
yeah, he knows.
I only know it halfway. Like, I know like this, that first bottle of Kentucky Spirit. Now I understand why you don't break it out very often, because it's delicious, and you can't find it. But it's
that's a store pick too, which we can explain those as well.
I know enough to know, like, oh, this is good.
Well, I guess so. Real quick, I'll finish background, then we're gonna jump into bourbon, just so that like people are like, who the hell is this guy saying?
Yeah.
Again, like I said, I feel like if I were to write a book, it was that typical American story journey. And now my journey is taking different paths, you know, the way the world is. But I started working at a local insurance company here in Medina. It's a smaller company. Then I left that company for a larger insurance company, so like a large corporation, member of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, so one of the largest insurance companies in the world. And then I left that for a less big but still large private, they're called mutual insurance companies. So there's 2 types of ownership for insurance companies. You're either publicly traded or you're owned by the policyholders, the people who buy the insurance from you. And so that's where I'm at right now. And when I started there, it was like, oh, this is great. They're a huge company. They specialize in commercial property. So I work on property insurance for some of the largest companies in the world. So for me, it was interesting. I understood it really well. It became so easy that I just thought it was easy. And then I just kept getting better and better at it. And that's where, we talk about like that $70,000 mark of, income. For a long time, we were having, Megan, my wife, was a nurse. So we were a dual income, no kids. Then it was like we had one kid and she scaled back, but my income went up and hers went down. So I think we maintained almost the same income level as a family for like 7 years. It was really weird because it was just kind of like the better off I was able to do for my standpoint, the less she had to do. And then we started having more kids. It was like a perfect flip to the point where the clinic she was working for got bought by a hospital, and they weren't even going to like let her take vacation, and she was only working 2 days a week. And they were like, we're going to give you demerits or something. She's like, I'm never going to accrue enough time to be able to take a day off. She's like, you don't even have to pay me on my days off. And they're like, well, we can't do that. So she became a big part of like a bureaucracy where they can't figure out solutions for like good people, which is what a lot of corporations are like these days. So she, like 4 or 5 years ago, she quit, and then my income took off exponentially. So it was just kind of like, it was a weird situation. And then we were in Wadsworth for a long time. We sold the house there. We moved to Medina. Again, not trying to chase the Joneses. We were kind of past that. We know it, when I say the Joneses, we know what I mean.
I think everyone knows. Yeah.
Keeping up with the Joneses. Yeah. We were, yeah. So we weren't trying to keep up with the Joneses, but we were just trying to find a better place to live. It's how I met Tony. Buying my house is the only reason I know Tony. So I guess whether I'm in over my head or not, which I'm not, it's funny to say that. Like, big house comes with big problems, new roofs, staining, siding, all that stuff. But Tyler Deso is a friend of Tony's. He's a realtor.
He helped me make this table.
Yeah, that look like something he could do. He's a very handy guy.
Well, he probably could have done it all, but sometimes that bastard procrastinates.
Yeah, he needed a little encouragement. I was like, all right, Tyler, when we finish this table.
You hear that, Tyler?
Yeah. So he just set a day, and I went over and pushed him. But yeah, he was a big piece of this table.
So, I mean, you talk about, in my life, everything seems to have happened for a reason that you look back and you're like, I wouldn't have never known Tony.
If there wasn't that meaningful relationship present.
Exactly. And that's where you started digging. I didn't have any meaningful relationships in Wadsworth. It was a really strange neighborhood we were in, one of those Ryan home development neighborhoods. You just get there's just so many kinds of people and types of people there. It's just like hard to like find friends. We moved to Medina 4 years ago. At that time I was still working at the company that I'm at now. And progressing through the ranks into the role that I'm in now, where I'm technically in a sales job, but it's not. And Tony and I have joked, it's just like this unicorn job where I can work 10 hours a week sometimes, or I only write one account a year. And they take a long time. You're talking about large corporations putting together like a large program, but I just feel like a project manager. It's like the better I'm at, it's like anybody, the better you are at your job or your craft or your skill, the easier it looks to people, to the point where people hate me because they're like, you don't do anything around here and you get paid a lot of money when these things hit.
Well, it's efficiency, right?
If
you can be one thing.
You're kind of right,
efficient.
But I've also spent a lot of time working my ass off to figure out how to make it look this easy.
Right.
So it's hard because I do joke with Tony a lot too. I'm like, I won't say it over the air, but I joke about what I do for a living, and it's really just...
Bro, you can say it if you want to say it.
No, I don't want to say it. I don't need to say it. But I'm working with people and nudging them in the right direction to kind of see things the way that I think they should see them. So some would say I'm, taking care of people in order to make them happy. But it works out. I mean, it's a joke because it's a soft skills type of joke. But anyway, that's where we're at now, and it's like, up until this point, and I'm sure we'll dabble a little bit into the Rona talk, which I despise, but we almost have to, because for the last 2 years, and that's where Tony and I probably had a lot of more deeper conversations than we've ever had, in just sharing information with him. And he works a lot. Tony works all the time, and I'm working from home for the last 2 years. So, you see all the memes, about like the scientist versus the at-home researcher. The funniest one is like, when they want to talk about misinformation and disinformation, the funniest meme I've seen, and I can laugh at myself. It's fine. It's a scientist, putting the things in little vials and like in the gowns and the dress, and they're like real science. And then it's some dude sitting on a toilet, and it's like, these are your other scientists, like the people who know better. And it's some dude playing on his phone on a toilet. It's like, well, to some degree, that's who I am.
I think there is some. I get the joke, and it is a joke because there's so much crap that people can find. But if at some point it's almost like if you approach it appropriately, it's almost like you're an analyst.
Yeah.
And if you look at all of the outputs you're getting, all the inputs you're getting, to what it is, like, and being able to sift through all that information, decipher it, and just put some critical thinking to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of the stuff isn't that complicated.
Yeah.
Like, just to even, maybe not to understand the science of it, the difficult stuff, but even to look at, all right, you have 5 different people saying, 4 people are saying these things and this other person's saying this one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, what are their motivations? Why are they saying these things? Who's paying them to say these things? Yeah. And you go, okay, I have questions. Yeah. And then they go, no, you're not allowed asking questions. And that's, now I have more questions.
I would say you certainly fall more in line with the data analysts and the.
No, that's why I try to like help my mom or dad, or they'll ask me real questions and they want to know what I think.
Yeah.
And I'll explain it to them. And sometimes, like anybody, if we're having some drinks, my mom will be a little drunk. She'll be like, what makes you an expert though? Like, you're like, they call it the internet. Like, they think the internet is just this place of garbage information, and that like none of it's legitimate. Like, it's all, because I'm trying to explain to her, like, what you're watching on TV is sound bites of what somebody wants you to hear. I go, that's all it is. I go, they're large corporations. I go, I work for one. I go, I know how this all works. Like, everybody's being paid to do and say the things that they say.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah.
I love that clip.
I think we've all seen that clip. Oh, absolutely. And it's just like, how can you laugh? Because you're like, how can people not see this? Like, how can they just not see some of it, some of this bullshit? But that's the joke, is like, there's so many varying degrees of people's, like, the paradigm that they live in. Like, and I explain to my wife too. I'm like, because she can't understand, like, how do people think and believe some of this stuff that they're hearing and seeing? And it's like, every person lives in a paradigm that you don't understand, because it's all of their own data points. But I'm going to take a time out on this topic. One of my superpowers is going on 100 tangents and bringing them all back. We're going to go back to bourbon, because we got to finish that talk.
Sure.
For the viewers that know, because we can take a real deep dive just into, the critical thinking and the logic of what Tony, I mean, I'm going to point at Tony a lot, because I go to him a lot as like, am I crazy? Like, can I just say these things out loud? Like, you analyze them, let me know what you think. And he's done that on several occasions. And
Bro, did you just hear that? He uses me as a sounding board. How scary is that shit?
Yeah, well,
it is scary.
I'm just joking.
I do the same, but usually I know when I'm saying something really crazy, if Tony just looks at me or just like, I'm going to need you to explain that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I hit somewhere off the mark here. Let me try this again.
You're really in that just a little bit for clarification, Fred.
Also, Fred is the meme. When we get text messages of him analyzing data, 85% he's on the toilet.
Oh, I believe that.
For sure.
Well, yeah.
95% of the time, my responses are on the toilet.
60%
of the time, every time.
Hey, it's because I'm being efficient with my time.
Yeah. I do the
And
same.
the bathroom is typically quiet.
Yeah, I can focus.
Quiet, yeah. That's where the kids are. You tell them you're not allowed in here when I'm in here.
So back to the bourbon.
The bourbon, yeah.
Bourbons.
So, and
Ohio controlled state.
Ohio owns it
yeah.
all, and then they redistribute it. That's where, like, a lot of people make a lot of money as distributors, because you're another middleman.
So state minimum. That's why you walk
minimums.
in there. State controls the prices.
The state controls the prices so that everybody is getting the same deal. And the state makes a lot of money off of this. And Ohio is actually one of the only states in the country that does the workers' compensation insurance as a state-run program. Everywhere else, it's like private healthcare. This is like a legit state-run, and it's unfortunately, it's better because they control the prices. Like some clinic's not going to push the state around, or some dude's not going to be able to like build this 2-year case and get paid for life. The state's basically like, this is what we're giving you, this is what we're doing, like this is how these things work out.
Is it better for companies though if they wanted to shop around for workers' comp?
It's a state program. I mean, it could. I don't actually know the cost of what that is. My oldest brother, used to sell it to like small businesses and packages because you get better rates the more numbers you have. So probably it might be a little more expensive, and that's the capitalistic case. But same with the liquor. Like if you wanted to be a capitalist, you would let all these liquor stores, which is what happens like Michigan and Indiana and stuff. And they're not usually egregious because they're running a business and they want to sell this stuff.
Well, some of them are.
Some
they're
of
called
them are,
museums.
They're getting there. Yeah, there's some dusties that it's like, you got to bring the price down. I might buy that. But up in like Michigan, they have their distributors, and so when you're in Michigan, you'll probably notice there's liquor stores everywhere. There's little shithole liquor stores everywhere. And it's like, why is there so many liquor stores? But in Ohio, they only give out a couple of the like in Medina, we have 2 liquor stores.
Yeah.
And they're both owned by Bueller's now. And that's fine. But they basically, for Bueller's, it's a guaranteed profit. It's not a huge profit. Sorry, my phone keeps vibrating. It's fantasy football. I'm in like 4 leagues and everybody's talking, so I should have turned it on silent. But so in Ohio, there's a guaranteed profit margin, and that's it. I think it's like 10% or something. And then in other states, you'll go up there and the guy can get 6 bottles of something that you want. He might charge you, his retail price is $55. He's going to charge you $75 a bottle, and he can make that extra profit on his own. So it's capitalistic, but in this state, people, because it's at the bottom barrel price. So it is in Ohio, for anything that is of any significance, it is guaranteed at this price. Even those Pappy Van Winkle bottles, the retail's like, for the most expensive one, the retail is like $250. But as soon as the state allocates them out, and they actually run a lotto now, where like you have to put your driver's license in. So they do the liquor lotteries for anything that's really allocated.
And that's basically rare bottles, and you enter your information for an opportunity to purchase that bottle at the state price.
At retail price. Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. I was just kind of giving an example. Like Jake puts his information in, he ends up winning. They say, "Hey, you won this bottle. It's $250. Now you get to pay $250.
Now you get to pay for it. Yeah.
A very rare bottle that's worth $3,000 on the
Some of them are, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of the argument for the more government, interjection would be that it's fair because it's across the board, the same rules for everybody. But obviously, sometimes being fair for everybody isn't always great.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. Like, I don't want to like it. At the core of you don't want to like it. You want it to be like, but these distilleries can charge whatever they want for them. They could put a $2,000 price tag on that bottle. They're just afraid that as soon as they do that, then they'll have inventory sitting on the shelves.
Yeah. I mean, no one's buying it. What's the point?
It worked okay for Whistle Pig.
Yeah, Whistle Pig did it. I mean, the Weller Antique 107 used to be a $35 bottle.
Yeah.
They finally took it up to $50 a bottle, and they've had no problem selling those. And so it's just like it's kind of an interesting dynamic because in my job, I was able to work with one of the largest distilleries in Kentucky, and I asked them that. I said, "Why don't you take your prices up?" And they're like superstitious about it. It's almost like the way we do for the insurance aspect. We also preach a lot about loss prevention. So we own the largest fire and natural hazards lab in the world. We burn things down and we tell you, like, this is how it's going to burn down and this is how you need to protect it. So for Kentucky, nothing is worse than a wood building, rick houses, where they store you. You got a wood building.
Bro, what do you mean? Then it's limited edition.
Right.
I know. You get
Fire
those,
Warehouse C, $7 million instead of Tornado.
You get those
some
tornado
extra
barrels.
smoky notes.
Yep. Yeah, but it's almost like a superstition because it's a wood building. They do wood racks, wood barrels, and the liquid is highly flammable. Right. So it's like, all right, from an inch, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be like, all right, if your job is to underwrite and price and provide product for property insurance, like, how much are you going to want that versus the hospital that's concrete, sprinklered, occupied 24/7?
Right.
So the pricing differential and the desirability to do that at a potential profit margin is huge. So for them, we were like, hey, if you just, because they also have these thick wood plank walkways that go through all the barrels.
Right.
And most of these are sprinklered now, and it's like you can literally take all those wood planks out and use like a metal mesh. It's like, and you're going to increase the odds of protecting this facility by like 100-fold because the water can get through it. Like, yeah, they're like worried about how that might mess with like the flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this like superstition. It's like it's inside the barrel. It's not gonna mess with the flavor at all. But they don't want to like touch it.
Touch any variable. I get that, man. Everything's so dialed in with
They
just
are.
anything and everything
Yeah.
can affect that.
Well, you don't know until you know. You do it, and then you find out something's wrong, and it takes you
Bro,
10 years to figure it out.
Why don't you guys run an experiment with that and you guys make your own bourbon? To
We
see how the
should.
different
We should
flavors
build a
are?
rick house up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we only have like 3 of those as clients, so it's probably not real cost effective. But they tried it at Jack Daniel's, like metal rick houses, and it didn't. And Jack Daniel's is most popular whiskey in the world, so they have to make sure their flavor profile is the same. But they're so big that they could try out like a metal warehouse, and they did, and they didn't end up having a flavor issue. They had a corrosion issue because it's like, all right, the wood burns, we get it, and then metal corrodes because of all of the alcohol that evaporates. So they were replacing, roofs and parts and rafters and things like that just to make sure the building doesn't collapse.
The chemistry's interesting. I just
Yeah.
learned. Did you ever? Some side note, because I'm really good at.
We're good at tangents.
If you're
We're
good,
all-
if you're good at
when
bringing
you
me
said
back,
that, I'm
I'll
like,
bring
oh,
you back.
God.
Yeah,
Don't
if
worry
you're good at
about it.
bringing
We're
me-
gonna have to reel them in.
yeah, if you're good at bringing me back, I'm good
No,
at getting off track.
I've already got my checklist in my
Okay,
head.
good deal. Well, talk about that. Have you ever I just had a moment where you ever have one of those things where where you're reading something or you're learning something new, but then you realize like you learned it like back in high school,
Mhm.
and it was like, and as you're like reading it, it finally clicks, and you're like, oh, I learned about this, but I never really learned about it. I just heard about it, and then as you're actually learning it and ingesting it, like everything, like the light bulb goes off, and it's like, oh, this makes sense. This is fascinating now. And when I was in high school, I just didn't give a damn.
But it was buried in there.
Yeah,
It
well,
was buried in
I
your
had
head.
that moment. I was reading Brian Greene is a physicist.
Mhm.
I was reading his book, and he was talking about like how water is so important to life and all these different things.
Mhm.
And I'm going to butcher this, but the idea is
all right.
because of the hydrogen and oxygen and the way the electron clouds need to balance each other out at the levels they're at. And since one is negative and positively charged, the reason water can be so corrosive is because of those negative positive charges are constantly trying to rip everything apart that it has water around it. And it's also at the same time, it gives water the ability to filter and transfer things very easily because of solubility. And it was like, we need water to survive. Our bodies are 60% water, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the transfer of all of those, nutrients and chemicals and whatnot also does a very good job of keeping you hydrated. So when you drink too much bourbon, you don't die.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's exactly why anything that's surrounded by water will eventually just crumble because the water is literally chemically pulling it apart. I'm like, oh, like that's fascinating now.
It is amazing.
It's like that's super neat. So that makes sense with the metal and the bourbon tearing the building apart.
It does. And
Let's see, we
it's-
got some ice too if you want to, after you drink that, if you want to change the profile.
Oh, you
Just
do?
so you know. Yeah, there's ice over here.
What's the proof on
Yeah,
it?
which one was?
Oh, that one's, I think it's 101 or something like that.
Was this that second bottle? Or was this the first one that I
Oh,
had?
shit, I don't
I
remember.
think it
You
was
got to keep track of your own.
1748.
Yeah.
Because that first one was really.
do the round robin
Yeah.
bourbon.
This was I didn't have. I'm gonna try this one. Compare it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so the point that I was making and Tony is agreeing with is that we do the bourbon thing. And bourbon's gotten to a point, it's so trendy now that these people will wait in line to buy anything that is allocated. And what I mean by allocated is it's almost like a unicorn term now because like it becomes whatever's the next hot bottle.
Yeah, difficult to get.
And so how do they
Has-
do that? Is there anything? Is it just they only have so many bottles per
Yeah,
state
like-
that they give, or is it like there's some kind of weird
Like
way
the
they
big
do it?
the big thing is if you and people that do this are nicknamed taters. That's
Taters?
If you want to Google that, it's actually an official. It's an official
Do you know?
term
Do you
for.
know the origin of that?
No,
don't
I
either.
read
I don't
about it.
either.
Yeah,
I don't either.
I
was
read
wondering
about
if
it.
you
Yeah,
knew.
well, let's find
That
the origin
castle.
of Tater. That's what we'll give her a job on that one. I don't know. I read an article about it, and the guy kept using the term Tater, and I'm like, that's fucking hilarious. Like, I'm gonna call people Tater.
Oh, that hit me a lot different than the other one did. That's surprising.
So if you want to see the most disgusted look on a liquor store employee's face, you go into a liquor store and
Hey,
you ask, "Hey,
Do you guys have any Blantons?
do you guys have any Blantons?" And you will just see you will see the
Because
blood
they get asked
just
that like
run from their face.
Yeah,
500
you should have
times a
just
day.
asked for their firstborn.
They
Instead.
might try to murder you because it's just so frustrating of a question. And it got to the point where like I've made friends with like the Bueller's people, but there's like 20 of them. So it's like it depends on when I go in there, and it's like I won't even ask. If it's somebody new, I won't even ask because they're just gonna be like, "Fuck this guy, he's just a tater."
This guy.
So so the joke is like Blanton's is like the Ralph Lauren now of bourbon. Like it's mainstream, it's high end brand. It's what everybody claims. That's where they want to start when you get into bourbon. Bourbon's gotten to the point where I got into it. I don't know, 10 years ago, because I couldn't for the life of me figure out why people really enjoyed Scotch. And it was like, and I was entering the business world,
I'm still trying to answer that question.
you go to these fancy
Some
dinners
were pretty
and
bad.
you go to these fancy dinners and it was like a competition. I remember getting made fun of because somebody had me taste this double peated something, whatever. And it was like, I think it was like $80 for a pour. And I take a sip of it and my face was just like they could see the disgust and they were like mad at me for not being able to choke it down. So like Scotch, like your level of sophistication is the abilities to straight face something that tastes.
Sorry, I don't
It's
like your
like-
dick water.
Yeah, take your shit.
It's like the IPA movement.
Yes,
like
yeah.
the shittier it tastes, the more I
the
pretend
more
to like
bitter
it.
it is. And so for the life of me, like I found the scotches that I thought tasted the best, which I think like a Glenlivet is a pretty manageable scotch, but it's still scotch. And I'm like, I don't like. So eventually, somebody was like, "Have you ever had bourbon?" I'm like, "Wow, what is that?" Like, because at the time, American whiskey was like thought of as bottom shelf shit. It was swill. It was stuff people drank just to get drunk.
Some of it is.
It is. It is. Well, and that's why you didn't know. Like when you turn 21, people have you do the three wise men, and it's disgusting.
Right.
Jose, Jack, and Jim, and it's just like, ugh.
That's hard.
It's like
Pretty
these are
broad
horrible.
there.
These are terrible people to drink. I don't like them. And then you realize the flavor profiles, and it's like, all right, I might sound like I'm a little soft, but like I love vanillas and I love caramels and I like those flavor profiles. And Tony knows my favorite bourbon profile. It's
Green apple.
the corn and the wheats. They
Yeah.
give you the caramel apples, green, like all these are good flavors. It's not like
I've told Tony
Smoke,
this.
leather,
Smoke,
leather.
shoes,
Yeah.
regrets.
Well, I'm
tree bark and moss.
Yeah.
Like,
I've been a huge fan of port finished.
yeah. Oh,
and
You like some sweet.
yeah, and stout finished barrels too.
Yeah.
I really like those. So if you find any, not too expensive ones out there, keep me
they're
in
all
line
out
because I'm a
there.
huge port and stout
Yeah.
finished barrel fan.
We'll get you something. We can find that easily. And that's the thing. It's like it's sweet without the sugar.
Yeah.
So like and I don't like a lot of sugar. I'm a little pudgier than Tony and you, but I enjoy the sweet flavor. But I have never, other than ice cream, I do love ice cream. But like I don't like eating a lot of like sugar because
Yeah.
A, it's terrible for you, and B, it just becomes like an addiction.
And
type
some of them, they're not necessarily like sweet in the same context what people you would think of as sweet. Because I don't like candy. Like
Right.
I just
Yeah,
can't do
yeah.
it. But like then there's some bourbons I've had are just way too sweet.
Some are way too sweet. I agree.
But like maybe that's why I like the finished ones, just because it's like they have just a touch. It gives that little just a smoothness
That's
to
good.
it. And
That's good.
which one did you have? Was it this one?
Yeah.
So this one's really good.
That's the one you like.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
This one's good, but
Yeah, that
they're
one's
both like the same proof.
No, I'm on this one here.
You're on this one.
Yeah.
Oh, this one. This
That
one's
one's
a
better.
lot smoother.
Yeah.
This one's got a little
more
more smoke
spicy.
to it.
This
Yeah.
one's okay. So I'll be interested to try that one again.
Yeah, this one was super smooth. This one. That's why it took me off guard because I'm like, well, they're both 101. Like,
Yeah.
very
All
different.
dynamically different beasts.
She's struggling to find this tater origin.
She was laughing over there. She
Was
found
she?
something funny.
No, there's just it's keep saying that it's very mysterious.
Okay.
It's one of those.
I like
but
it.
taters
Somebody's
are
gotta
very they are defensive on Reddit.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Like-
taters are.
Yeah, they are defensive, and you're probably a bourbon snob if you
Yep.
would call someone a tater,
Yeah.
according to the taters on Reddit.
I will own the bourbon snob thing. But the thing about taters is, yeah, fuck taters.
So
mean, come on.
what exactly? Like, so we don't know why, but it's just
So they go in, they'll stand in line, and they'll ruthlessly acquire without the intent of drinking.
I mean, yeah. So fuck taters.
Fuck taters.
Yeah.
So then they'll go online, and there's a lot of Facebook groups, and they keep getting shut down, and you got to like be very like crafty and careful. But they'll buy Blanton's for $55, and they'll turn around and they'll either raffle them off, which I'll admit, like I've gotten into a couple of the raffles because it's like some of my favorite bottles are on there, and I can't find them anywhere ever. And they'll like there's a $38 retail bottle that's favorite of mine. It's called Elmer T. Lee. They'll get it. Somebody will have it. They'll post it, and it's like, oh, fuck. It's like I'm drinking. It's a Friday night. It's like 30.
That's
It's like a
what'll get you.
$30 entry into they do a 10-person raffle. So 10 times 3. So he's making $300 on a $38 bottle.
Right.
So it does hurt, but it's like, all right, but I'm not paying more than retail for it, and I don't want to support this, but you can't get it.
You need a just like for like Amazon shopping.
Yeah.
You need like a breathalyzer on your phone.
Mhm.
Like to open this app,
But-
you have to blow beneath the driving.
It feels
limit.
it feels more fair though because I'm paying $30 for a spot. I know the guy's making a profit, but like if I win, and I did win one, so I got a nice Elmer T. Lee, a new bottle that I got to pick up Monday. But it's like I don't like supporting the profit, but it's
you also
inevitable,
don't like standing in line.
right? And this is America. Like this
Capitalism
is
at
kind
its
of
finest.
it's capitalism at its finest. So the problem is though, like people know when the pallets drop. So like most of this is all Buffalo Trace products. You know, I saw your Buffalo there. I thought at first it was whiskey related, but you got
No.
a pig on top, so it's really not. So
yeah, those are a whole different.
Buffalo
backstories.
Trace is the name of the distillery,
Right.
and then they have all of the most sought after brands.
Right.
So you know,
Yeah, they have some good brands.
yeah,
I mean, that's even like I joked about the benchmark, but man, $15 for a handle of whiskey, that's about as
Well,
good as it's
and-
going to get.
My brother was just had Benchmark barrel proof, and that's a $20 bottle, and it's really good. And he was basically like the guy at the store. And like I said, my oldest brother doesn't have kids, so he still hunts and he still talks to
got
like
extra
these
time.
people. He's got a lot of
Sounds a little taterish, bro.
It's a little. He's
joking.
he is a tater.
No, he doesn't flip them though.
He doesn't
shares
flip them. He keeps
He's a
them
good
and he
dude.
drinks them and he shares them.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah, then that's,
There you
that's
go.
not-
Respect
And
that.
that's
not a
what.
tater. He's just
and-
an enthusiast.
He's like a redskin, not like an Idaho Reset or anything.
yeah.
And that's why, you know, for Tony and I, it's like even when I find like really good stuff, it's almost like you don't even want to drink it anymore because like I want to drink stuff that I can try and find easily, and I want to leave that bullshit game out there for somebody
Yeah,
else.
something readily available because if you like it, then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I get this one bottle and that's all I ever get.
Yeah, people are not on to this Eagle. Or
Oh,
the,
yeah.
the rare breed here.
I'm not a huge fan of the rye, but
You don't like
regular
that
one.
one?
no, it's good.
Did you try it today again?
I haven't tried not that
Probably
that
better.
bottle,
Probably better revisit it.
but I like the rare breed.
Yeah.
better than the rye.
It's very good. The Michter's has I swear it'll be the next thing in a year or two. Like it's probably the best rye. Michter's single barrel rye is still now one of my
I think I
favorite
gave
bottles.
you a bottle of that, didn't I? 'Cause
No.
I don't love it.
It's rye. No, you didn't give me one of those.
I'll have one that you can have.
Do you?
I like the barrel strength rye.
You can get them on the shelf.
Yeah.
You can't find the barrel strength rye anywhere though.
No. I have one bottle of that left.
Yeah, but when I'm talking about something I could walk into Bueller's and just be like, I really love this. I can buy it whenever I want. That's what Blanton's used to be.
Right.
And that's why I joke, like growing up, you know, after drinking age, you could buy a bottle of Blanton's. I used to have a little bar in my old house that only had 4 bottles on it. And the bar I have now in my new house has like 50 bottles on it, and then like got another 50 stored underneath.
Dude, I
Just
think there's
'cause.
more than 50, but
Yeah, I'll give or
staying
take.
humble, I like it.
Yeah, but and part of that is just because, like you said, it's became a hobby. You pick something, you do it. But Tony and I and people, I only let people try stuff. That's why I got mad at my dad when he was just taking shots of it. It's like I was like, you
At least
know,
he
if
wasn't
you,
mixing it, right?
yeah, no, people post pictures of those online all the time.
No, we're not going there.
Nope, we're not
people
going there.
people will do that on these bourbon groups. They'll put a expensive bottle and a bottle of Coke next to it and be like, my favorite mixer. And it gets a lot of people all jazzed up, and I'm like, you know, the guy's
Just
just
trolling,
messing
yeah.
around.
Yeah, or who cares? It's not your bottle. Drink
isn't,
however,
yeah.
drink it however you want to drink it.
If you want to steal your husband's bottle of George T. Stagg and mix it, you can do that.
I don't know what you guys are talking
Your
I
about.
thought
if
you
your
said we
wife-
weren't going there.
Not gonna go there, boys.
Well, that's what I found because I'm not nearly on your guys' level whatsoever. But I did find I'm kind of upset that it's made in Portland, but I really like the Woodinville port
Oh,
gas finish.
there's
Dude, nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that.
No, I
there's
just,
nothing wrong.
I just.
Is it? I thought it was made in Washington.
Oh yeah,
State,
it's not.
yes,
No, it's not.
state of
Yeah, that's right.
Washington.
It's made in Washington. Yeah,
Oh,
state.
not Portland. Sorry.
I'll say he's got a bottle up there.
yeah.
Where's it at?
I think you're.
just says
I think you're good to go. They're pro gun friendly these days, aren't they?
Quincy,
Well,
Washington.
the state of Washington. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Isn't how'd that trial go?
Oh, that wasn't in Washington, was it? That was in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it was
was.
Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah,
it
that's
was
right. My
the other
bad.
W.
Washington's
yeah,
different. Washington's a different.
Completely different.
But and the states are branching out, which I appreciate. And I was going to make the joke that, you know, I don't want to sound like a hipster, but I almost don't want to tell people I enjoy bourbon anymore because it's become such a
One of
thing.
those things.
It's one of those things now where it's like everybody's into it, and then you got to like start over. And I've had neighbors over, and they don't get it. They don't get it at all. I'm like, all right, and I always do the joke. I pull out a bottle of scotch. I'm like, just smell it. Like, you don't have to taste it. I was like, then just smell this. Like, you don't have to taste it. It's like, here's the difference. And people, like, they'll smell it and be like, oh. I'm like, yeah, it's fucking disgusting. And then they'll smell that and they'll be like, oh, this, you know, it smells really, really good. And then they'll want to taste it, and they taste it and they don't like it necessarily because you're just not ready for that level of burn
Right.
when you're tasting.
Do you hit them with something higher than 80 proof?
No,
don't even know if you
I
have any 80
usually
proofs,
if
but-
I'm gonna do newbies on bourbon, I'll pull out, like you said, a store pick of Eagle Rare,
Okay. This is
or
what, 90 proof?
yeah, or my wife has celiac disease, so she had to stop drinking beer a long time ago. So she was drinking wine. Obviously, the seltzers are, you know, a big thing these days too, or easy drinkers. But she started drinking bourbon too. She in a million years never thought she would like it. She didn't want, you know, this and that. It's too. I can't.
Yeah, I'm just the same way. So every once in a while,
Yeah.
do some bourbon, and it's
I'll make sure to get benchmark though when I want to add it to my Diet Coke.
Yeah, yeah, you can do-
yeah,
Well,
something
that's
like
a
that.
Jack and Coke still. I still drink
Yeah.
it.
And that's
I need some
because
caffeine.
the flavor profile there.
Jack
it's
and
Single,
Coke's
bar-
perfect.
single barrel proof?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
well,
I wouldn't do that.
yeah. Well, I think too. You talked about, you know, the whole bourbon thing, and the bourbon scene is seen kind of as, you know, highfalutin or whatever.
Mhm.
Maybe not even that, but
Yeah.
like the whatever.
Well,
it
it's
is.
trendy. is
The
what it is.
trendy,
the
yeah.
trendy thing. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, because, like I said, I'm not on your guys' level by any means, but I found something that I do enjoy drinking.
Mhm.
Just like, you know, have a glass of bourbon without any ice, no mixers or anything like that. And it's different than, you know, you drink a beer. All right, it's a bunch of calories. Not the
Yeah.
If that's not your concern, okay, well, I can drink a couple glasses of bourbon, or I can drink a couple glasses of beer and then pee for the next 2 hours. Or, like, okay, if it's not the calories and it's not, you know, the worried about just constantly drinking so much fluid, it's just something different that it's
Yeah.
whatever you like. It doesn't have to be like
you
so.
skip the carbs. You
Right.
know, if you're drinking it neat, skip the carbs. We went out to lunch yesterday, my wife and I, and without the kids, and we wanted to watch that football game, OSU versus Michigan State. It was terrible. But I ordered a beer, and she's like, "Do you want a tall or short?" And I was like, "Well, I'm getting hot wings." I was like, "I'll just sip on a beer, like a tall beer for the afternoon." It's noon, so I didn't need to like get all ripped up. She brings out this cannon-sized mug that I can barely, you know, my wrist strength, I can barely lift it up and drink it. And I'm like, how the hell do people drink this much liquid? And I have a brother-in-law who won a bottle of the rarest bottle of bourbon you can win. Went to a Miller Lite drinking brother-in-law of mine, because I had him sign up for the lottery, and I'm not going to call him out in this podcast, but he ended up he ended up selling the bottle for a lot of money, because he retails $250, and
You'd almost think he may have promised that bottle to someone else.
it felt like it.
Or at least
It felt like
offered,
I thought at the time when he won, I was like, this is awesome. Like, nobody is going to have this bottle in their collection. I'm going to be able to bring people in my basement and point to a bottle that nobody's ever seen before. and everybody.
Obviously not the case.
when I said paradigms, and everybody lives in different worlds, like his paradigm was different, and I respected the fact that the money meant more to him than the bourbon, but I didn't respect the fact that we could have owned that bottle and we could have had it and whatever. So that's because that's a hard bottle. You'll never win it again. I think, and that was 4 years ago now. I think you could sell that bottle for $4,000 now.
Is that a 23 year?
Yeah, that was the 23 year.
Yeah, it's probably at least 3 for sure.
3 plus. And so it's just like, hey, you have these things. And I joked with Tony and my brothers who were like, the fuck? Like, because they're all into it too. And you say into it and you're not at our level. Nobody's at any level. A lot of this is bullshit, and we just know what we like. But I joked with my brothers, and to the point where we won't pay more than retail if we don't have to. Every now and then you might be in a situation where you do it, but I always joke, it's still brown, and it burns on the way down. Like, no matter what you do, the subtleties are so small that, don't get hung up on whether you're good at it or not. Nobody is. It's all bullshit.
Well, I guess I said that to kind of like bridge the gap.
Yeah.
Because the same place I was years ago when Tony really, really started getting into it, and he was having me try all these things, and I hadn't acquired the palate for it yet to be able to decipher some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like, I wish I'd go back and try some of those ones that, like, because we drank some good ones, and it was like, I don't remember, but like, it wasn't until recently where I was able to try some and go, oh, that's not what I like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is what I like. And when you get to that point, just finding that middle of the road, decent priced bottle that you enjoy drinking, it doesn't even necessarily, some of them don't burn all the way down. You know what I mean? It's like, I like this.
Yeah.
I found something that I just enjoy.
Well,
like,
same story, but same brother-in-law. We did this was back in like 8 or 9 years ago. We did a taste off, because there are people, and I always joked when we were partying, in backyards and bonfires. Like, there's no fucking way you can tell me the difference between Coors, Miller, Bud Light, Busch Light, Natty Light. There's no fucking way you can get them all right.
Sure way.
No. There's no way.
For sure way.
There's no fucking way. So
next podcast, I know what we're doing.
We did it, and these are hardcore. Like, I was a Bud Light drinker at the time. I'm like, I like Bud Light. If I
some
had to
of
drink.
them are real close.
I will give you that.
Here's
Here's what happened. We did 6, because I'm like, if you do 2, maybe most people get it right. You do 6, there's no fucking way one person at this party gets it right. And I said, I'll put $100 on it, and people put in $10, so there's 10 people. I collected $100. I'm like, you guys are stupid. Like, there's no chance. They're all the fucking same. They're all watered down, non-Pilsner, or they're Pilsner beers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to do it. Like, you'd have to find somebody that, like, does it quite a bit.
The people who loved Miller Lite got Miller Lite correct. And I mean, part of it was a joke, because I'm like, you guys don't drink the rest of them, so you're not going to know.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You'd have to know, but you could do it.
But you would have to drink all 6 of them regularly. And these were all beers that were at the party that everybody drank regularly. Right. So everybody tasted them like before. I'm like, you can do whatever you want. Taste them first. Practice. Take notes in your head. It could be, but I promise you will get 2 or 3 of them wrong.
Yeah, I mean, more than likely, unless you're skilled.
But, and I don't mean to be like, I'm not like bragging like, oh, I'm so smart. I'm just saying, like, bourbon's the same way. Like, you get to a point where, like, when you learn your palate a little bit, and I would say I'm amateur. The people that write articles are just like, they're using tasting notes that I don't even know what they are sometimes. Like, some of the words that they use, I'm like, what is that?
Tarragon, cardamom.
Yeah, I don't know any of that. I just know, like you said, I know. Okay, these are the kind of things. Like, I know, like, Rye. I like Rye.
Marzipan.
I like Rye without ice cubes. Because one tip for me, like, especially like this wild turkey, you put an ice cube in it, it tastes like crap to me. Yeah. But I like, that's as far as I go. Like, I know I like port, cask finished bourbons, and Rye I like neat. Other than that,
and that's the point.
Like,
you can.
That's about
sometimes I can tell when it's a wheated bourbon versus a rye versus one that's like
traditional rye for sure.
Yeah,
you got that spice. Let me ask you this: how about like the different distilleries? So like if you were like, hey, Dickel versus Wild Turkey Russell, like, dude, I can easily be
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's a profile
They
right there.
because like even like a Heaven Hill is a high corn profile whiskey.
So the mash bill, explain that a
mash.
little bit.
That's just so in order to be considered a Kentucky straight bourbon, obviously you have to be from Kentucky. It's kind of some stupid law that they created for themselves because they believe in like the limestone water that go like you said, you talk about water and the minerals and stuff that can go into it. So Kentucky straight bourbon is from Kentucky, limestone water, all that stuff. But bourbon in general has to be, if you want to call it a bourbon, that's why Washington and Texas and they can all get into bourbon because you just have to have created a whiskey, which is like the parent company of all brown corn based liquors.
Right, because all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon.
Yeah, whiskey is like if you wanted to say Christianity, and then you started going down into the Catholics, Protestants, Lutherans, and all that. Because, Scotch.
That sounded beautifully sacrilegious.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. Hey, Jesus drank.
So whiskey.
Did he drink or did he just
He just made the
turn
drinks.
water to water?
Yeah,
He
and
just made the drinks. He's just the bartender.
I like to think of my Jesus as a
And like Muslims would be like gin, and then there's all kinds of gins. So like whiskey, like Scotch is whiskey, Jack Daniels is whiskey. They're all whiskeys because they're aged in oak barrels. And then bourbon has to be at least 51% corn. So when they make the mash, they put corn in, they put all these ingredients in where it starts to break down and digest into alcohol. So you ferment, yeah. When you get into those tanks and you can see like the bubbles, the stuff bubbling up. If you've ever been to
I haven't.
that's a good time.
I'd like to go.
Yeah.
Take a tour.
I think that there's a few more things too for the bourbon besides the 51% corn.
No, that's it for bourbon. Just 51% corn.
Oh, there's gonna be a fight.
No. There's not going to be a fight, but I think to be considered bourbon, there's a few more things. So there's an age like what is it? If there's something about 2 years, otherwise you have to commit the age
I'll let
statement
her
on the
Google
bottle.
it, yeah.
It can't go in the barrel above 160, and it can't be pulled at below 80 proof. And it doesn't have to be Kentucky, but it has to be American, I think.
Semantics.
And there might be one other thing.
American, but
Is it virgin?
Virgin oak.
I thought it was.
You're right.
I thought it was virgin oak.
He's
but
right.
I feel like there's been some other people that are calling them bourbons, and they're not.
They're probably
virgin
not.
oaks.
And so he's right. There's a lot of other nuances to it, but I always just.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to.
No, you're right though. He's
contest
right.
You. No. I just wanted, for clarity's sake, because I guarantee someone's going to be like, "Oh no, that's not true.
He's
There's
right.
other
Yeah.
things."
Yeah. I'm just trying to keep it
I know how
simple.
people
If
are.
they listen to this podcast and that's the first time they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's not true," like,
So
they
you
got
get
more problems than that. Trust me.
You get a comment calling me out on my generalizations.
Yeah, if that's the only problem you've had with this podcast,
she'll look
ever.
it up. There's a couple of Virgin oak is a big. That has to be in virgin oak.
Says the mash has to be distilled at 160 proof or less. Bourbon must be aged in a charred white oak barrel that has not been used previously.
Virgin.
It has to be made in the U.S.
The only virgin we know.
The barrel used for aging a whiskey considered a bourbon must be charred white oak barrel by law.
Yep.
Oh, and a
By
completely
law.
new one.
By law.
Those are the only ones, and then
So
made
what-
in the USA was the last one.
So what do they do with the barrels after the first batch?
The 80 proof for sure, though, too.
Yeah,
You can't be
80
below
proof,
that 80
no.
proof. And
Well,
be
no,
considered
that's
bourbon.
because then you can sell it at a gas station.
So they take.
You can't sell bourbon.
And I.
You can
like I
in the
said,
state.
Yeah.
You 100% can.
and
Nebraska does it. God bless them.
that's the best part of enjoying bourbon and not being 100% expert is you generalize and you move on.
Yeah.
Tony, you got specific. He's right. We don't need to get called out in the comment section. If anybody wants to call us out.
Somebody probably would.
But the point being is like it's an American thing. But what they do with the old barrels when they're done is they send them to Scotland to make scotch, or they send them to wineries
I was gonna
that'll
say,
put
or wine, yeah.
or wine. They'll they're getting real creative, or they'll sell them to consumers to stick in their basement, things like that. So it's getting real like it's a big business right now.
Businesses are booming.
Business is booming, but the whole point of the whole thing is like Tony and I will buy. If I have a nice bottle, I will invite anybody over that enjoys it to taste it. I don't care
Not
the
to
price.
just take shots of it.
No, not to take shots of it,
Dad.
Mark. But and that's the point. And you ended up making a network of friends. I have Tony. I have like 5 or 6 other people. My brothers. Like we will all taste and share. Money off the table. Nobody bickers. Nobody's like, I owed you $20 for tasting, your $100 bottle. Nobody does that. And that's the rule. And that's the fellowship camaraderie. Like, you do it to get together. It's a reason to get together. We're not experts. That's why I joked, like, we had to do that tasting to be like, I hope that this $1,000 bottle is noticeably better than this $20 bottle. But if you would have put 4 in there, I wouldn't have been able to maybe pick out which was which. And that was why I made the light beer joke, because you could put 6 of the best bourbons on the table, and I'd have a hard time being like, all right, that one's that one, that one's that one.
Right.
You get a couple of them right. Now, what Tony said earlier, if you were smart, what you would do is you'd go do like a Jim Beam brand, you'd do a Buffalo brand, you'd do like a Jack Daniels brand. Yeah. Then you could probably start to get pretty accurate.
Some of our profiles.
Yeah, but that was why I said light beer, because it was like, if you gave me the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, which is one of the most highly sought after 6-bottle releases that they do every year.
Well, 5-bottle this
5
year.
bottles, sorry, yeah. And then they put up the Pappy. Yeah, they got rid of the George C. Staggs out this year. And then you have the Pappy Van Winkle collection, and you can see what those are. It's basically, that's 6 bottles as well.
Well, you got what? They
got a rye, a family, and then you got
12 rye, 15,
the old Rip.
20, and 23.
Yep. So it's one of those things.
You say you don't have time.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
You always make fun of me that I have more time on my hands. You just spend your time differently.
No, I don't make fun of you. I just do 3 things at once, dude. Well, while you're texting on this shitter, I've got 2 monitors on this shitter. And my phone's on.
Yeah.
Memorizing bottles of bourbon.
Yeah.
No, that's standard, man. You'd learn that once, and if you were into it, you'd go, oh,
I know. I'm just giving
that.
you a hard time.
I know. I wish we could get them, though. I'd love to. We don't drink them enough to be able to.
You don't. That's why that was the joke about the light beers. Like, you got a Miller Lite drinker who's trying to identify, Labatt Blue Light. It's like, you're not gonna be able to figure that out. You can't. And we couldn't either, because we don't taste them enough. We wouldn't taste all 6 of those, and there's 12 of them. You put all 12 of them up there, and it'd be a fucking shit show of trying to figure out which one was which. You'd have no idea. Maybe a couple if you're lucky.
Yeah, you get a couple of them.
I don't know. I'd be hard pressed, because I don't taste them enough. Obviously, if you put all 12 of those most rare bourbons that Buffalo Trace makes,
oh yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that.
I might be able to figure out one that
Maybe
I
the
own
wheat versus the rye.
Yeah, you'd be able to figure out the ryes, and then you'd go from there. But that's all for me, and especially recently, because I started getting into like trying to have the best collection. Then I realized how expensive it was. Then I realized how pointless it got. And that's why I like Tony. That's why I said, just make a network of people, and when they get something cool that you want to taste, come over. And that's what we do now.
Or I mean, if we're in the store, like we're like, oh, if we can get that, like, you want one? Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then someone just mules it back for them.
Yeah, there's stuff.
There's times. How many times I've sent Tony a couple pictures before. I'm like, hey, this. And I would say 75% of the time, he's like, no, that's shit. Okay. Just never seen it before. I figured I'd run it past you.
Bro, that's my porn, is when people send me bourbon.
Exactly.
I don't want nudes. I want bourbon pictures.
And that's why there's stuff he likes that I don't like. When I see it, I'll pick it up and I'll give it to him. I'll usually be like, hey, you still want this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
And I'll do it for him. That's why I said, if I'm there, I see it. He Venmos me. He's an upstanding citizen, because he'll Venmo me as soon as I buy it, which is
I'll Venmo you before you buy it.
A very rare quality in a person, because I know a few people that'll get the bottle, and then I'll be like, hey, you still owe me $60 for that bottle, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's
there's more people like that though in the world than the other way around. Like, I'm more like Tony. Like, I'm like paying you to a fault, or even when I'm gambling and I lose my bet, like, I pay right away. And then most people will hope you forget about it. It's like, no,
I don't want to forget about it, because I'm like, then I feel bad.
I would rather have someone owe me money than owe them money.
Exactly.
Because now you owe me a favor, and I'll collect on that.
I'll collect on that shit.
Yeah, but those types of people, those types of people don't remember that they owe you money, so they don't think they owe you a favor.
I don't mind reminding them or beating their fucking ass. So
that's the difference. Yeah, I can learn a few things from Tony, but
I always just feel bad.
You notice that a lot about business owners, though, too. Like, there's just a lot of people who don't know how to run a business.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for Tony's business, like, it's just running it well puts you in an echelon of success.
And it's not hard.
That's what, like you said, it's not hard. Like, Rogue, like, and I've talked to other people and referred them. It's like, they get back to you quick, they quote you fair, and then when you say yes, they show up for the job.
They follow through.
Yeah, and props to Corey Parsons for that.
Corey, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
But I deal with customers all the time, and like there's people don't understand like, well, this business doesn't do this or that, whatever. It's like all you have to do to run even a remotely successful business is just do what you're going to say.
Dude,
that's it.
Customers all the time would be like, I can't believe you showed up on time. And I'm like, what do you mean? I enjoy porterhouses and good bourbon. I'm going to show up and make money.
Yeah, that part just that fascinates me. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is when I'll be there, and this is what it's going to be.
Yeah, but
it's like
that obviously came from somewhere with all of us, man. I don't know if it goes back to the anomaly of your family with the 5 boys, and that was taught to you. I don't know if it was my father being in the military and a law enforcement. I don't know. If you figured that out on your own, I don't know. That came. I
remember hearing when I was growing up. I don't know my grandpa because he died. I think this was the grandpa that died like as I was basically born. But he was known to say, if you're late, or if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, don't even bother showing up.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, and it means something because then like when you get, hey, let's meet at 4:00. All right, 4:00 we'll be there. 4:15 rolls around. All right, now I'm fucking irritated. Because you just wasted 15 minutes of my time minimum. Like, I don't want to do it to somebody else, so
yeah,
I don't expect.
So, dude, here's a monkey wrench in that. What about foreign countries though, where they're pretty like just laissez-faire
there's
about
culture stuff.
Yeah, and
culture stuff's one thing.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. I mean, there's a lot of countries that when they show up, they just show up and they don't find that disrespectful. Like, why do you think that in our culture it is disrespectful?
Well, I think it's, to me, I guess this is, to me, what it is if I don't know for sure that I can do something, then I won't say I can.
Yeah.
It's the disrespect and the annoying thing to me is when someone says, this is when I'll be there at 4, and then they don't show up till 4:30. Why didn't you just tell me 4:30?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to be there at 4:30, then...
That's, so like Tony, because I've worked with a lot of different cultures, I think a lot of that's a capitalism thing.
Okay.
You can be, if you don't show up on time, like nobody is not impressed if you show up on time. There are a lot of people that aren't impressed when you don't show up on time.
Yeah.
And then you can be fired for it. Whereas in like other countries, it's very laid back. There's not a lot of aggressive, like you're out, this guy's in. There's just people that operate that way because there's not a lot of options and they're not as intense about it either. They're just like, we're just trying to get some stuff done in a very casual time frame. And that's where, we can get into kind of the stuff that's changing, but like prior to this and like our culture was, work hard, a lot of hours. So people were more impressed with showing up on time and like that diligence and that business stuff. But other countries they're not like that, and they have different economic structures and different cultures around.
I mean, do you think one's better than the other? I mean, I don't work with foreign people like you do. Do you feel like the foreign people that you work with that take more holidays, that don't have the constraints of the time that we do, are happier, that they're more joyful, that they enjoy life to a different degree?
Yeah. I think
you're saying we're fucking up.
I wouldn't have said that 3 years ago because it was like, oh, this is why we're the best country in the world. But a lot of things have changed to the point where you're kind of reanalyzing what it means to be happy. And that's where we all are. And that's where I'm talking to you about, like, because I was on a fast track for success, and a lot of it involved relocating and going up that ladder. And after these last 2 years, I just am like, it used to be okay to do that and make those sacrifices, and people almost revered you for it for to some degree. Now you're looking at, like, I'm talking to Tony, I'm like, I don't know, like I'm looking at, risk reward and time output, and I'm like, I'm okay with that now. Like the hero stuff is gone. Like you used to be thought of as a hard ass and a hard worker, like if you were sick and you came into the office and you got through it. Well, now that's like changed. Like you got the plague, you can't come in. All of this stuff is different now.
Cass, pull up if you can. There was something I saw online about, I think it was like the CEO of Google, and he talked about the 5 balls and juggling them. I don't know if you saw that quote. I don't know if you saw that quote. Pull it literally plays into exactly what you're saying. And they talk about family, work, health, those things. And you see if you can pull that up. It plays in perfectly.
Yeah, and I think a lot
There's
of people.
There's a YouTube video. Was it a video?
It was a video, but there's a quote that goes along with it that's probably easier. There's like 5 balls that you're always juggling, is what he was saying. And like there's like 4 that are rubber, or no, 4 that are glass and 1 that's rubber. And the one that's rubber is work.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine life is a game of 5 balls that you manipulate in the air, trying not to fall these balls. One of them is rubber, the rest is glass. The 5 balls are work, family, health, friends, soul.
It's weird coming from the CEO of Google.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I
well,
usually, once I see them quoting stuff, I'm like, all right, well, you're just making
says-
shit up to look like a
It
normal
will not be
person.
long before you realize that work is a rubber ball. Whenever you fall, you will jump again while the other balls are made of glass. If one of them falls, it will not return to its previous form.
Yeah.
Yeah, reread the ones outside of work again, if you don't mind.
Work, family, health, friends, soul.
Okay.
Yeah. I get that. I think a lot of people, like you said, are realizing that they're reassessing, reevaluating what their life means. I think that's one thing I've been semi-lucky. I think this year it's really, or this past couple of years have really instilled that on me. But we've always kind of taken the approach, particularly in the last few years, where it's, I've said it before, where, we didn't necessarily grow up, working hard, like families worked hard, but not super, like, wasn't financially well off or anything. And when I was a kid, my idea of success was, we talked about success earlier, my idea of success was pay my bills on time. I can eat good food, and eventually, if I can be debt free, like that's all the success I ever really wanted in life. And then once you get to that $70,000 a year job or whatever it is, some people, they hit that and they go, okay, then I want 140, then I want 280, then I want to be making $500,000 a year, then $1 million. And I think that realization that set in recently with a lot of people is, oh, I found a job, or I found this career, or whatever it is, or I started a business. I can make enough money to take care of my family. What else do I really need?
What's next?
Like maybe what's next is I can just go sit back on my lawn chair and look at my backyard and just enjoy it with my family now. Like, I think a lot of people are making that realization of it.
So many things have changed, and it's like what you said. You're fortunate enough to be able to, like, at least I was. My company sent us all home March of last year. It's like 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's a loaded statement.
600 days later.
But, to have the fortune and to be home with family for 2 years is in and of itself a rare experience.
Right.
Now, what are they trying to accomplish with a lot of this stuff? That's a whole nother podcast in and of itself. And we can touch on that, but it's like, all right, I've been home. People are not wanting to come into the office. We can talk about the vaccine mandates and all the stuff that go along with that. And it's like, we had a meeting in a city that I had to fly to, and it was like half the people videoed in and the other half had like family events. And then I had a meeting in Detroit that I chose to go down to Amish country with my wife over, instead of, like, normally I would have canceled on that and been like, we got to, like, reschedule that. I need to be at this meeting.
Right.
I videoed into the meeting instead and just, did it from the computer at the inn that we were staying at. And it was like, people are choosing family now over work, and you're seeing that. And it is funny because it's happening, but it's like, why is it happening? And it's like, because people are caring less. They care a lot less about this stuff.
Right.
And I've talked to Tony about this stuff too. And it's just like, you're starting to see and realize what's happening out there. And they've kept us home, and they're keeping us home probably for a reason. And they're pushing all these people to stay inside their bubbles. And we're working through it as a company too. And the biggest problem they have now is, the vaccine mandates and reporting papers and submitting your status and things like that are all very, the younger generation knows it's all very Orwellian. We all read the novels, and we all learned from that book, and everybody said this was a precursor or a blueprint or a playbook, whatever you want to call it.
Dude's a fucking time traveler.
He was good.
He had to have been, and you're seeing, but a lot of people aren't seeing it. And they, I was with a friend last night, and it was like, I was speaking my mind at a very high level because I'm always very careful to go all in or not.
Right.
And he didn't make any comments back, and you could just tell he didn't care, because the people that are on the inside the circle right now, they don't care yet. I keep saying you don't care yet until they keep pushing it to a level
until
where you do care.
the circle gets small enough where you're starting to be on the outside of it.
Circle gets small enough, and I mean, you're seeing companies, they're going to start terminating people and letting people go, and they're doing this whole thing, and it's just like, what's the point?
Right.
And like you said, not to get conspiratorial, but you go back to, like, they started this out as a public health measure. It was all for public health, and it's like, all right, like, I'll play that logic game because I will. You'll talk to people that are, I don't know, I always say inside or outside the matrix, depending on what day it is. It's like, all right, you talk to the people inside the matrix, and you're like, well, maybe it is better inside the matrix, and maybe they're right and I'm wrong. I don't know. Like, you never know.
Right.
You don't know. And you're constantly, and my wife and I are constantly in this battle of, are we in or out, or are we right or wrong? And you talk to them, and you're just kind of like, all right. I was like, I like to play the logic game. Let's just start with critical thinking. And I don't even care where you could be a hardcore. You could think I'm a nut for thinking what I think, and I wouldn't care. I'll say anything without going a mile deep, and I'll say, start the logic game. All right, public health. If it was about public health, then there wouldn't be allowed a profit to be made.
But the shots are free.
They're free, yeah. They're free
because someone's paying. Someone's paying for them.
The government's buying them all, or your health insurance, if you have it, is, I don't even know.
What did you see? I think was it Pfizer or Merck? They just signed a $5.9 billion deal for their pill.
Buying $5.4 billion worth of their pills.
Yeah, their pills. It was over $5 billion. I was like, oh yeah.
So the government's buying them at an egregious profit. And then so again, you talk about public health. Profit should have been off the table. So we're getting into Rona a little bit here.
Yeah,
just at a high level.
Yeah,
it's just at a high level because it's, I'm struggling just with the fact that people can't see this stuff just from a critical thinking standpoint. And I should preface this, and unfortunately, and I've told Tony this, like, and this is why, I talk to Tony. I think I give him more ideas and thoughts than he can me, because he's a Renaissance man out there working, doing his jobs, running companies and stuff. And I'm a guy who's being forced to work at home on a computer all day, every day. So when I tell people, like, I'm not coming from a basis of knowledge where I read Twitter feeds and stupid shit. I read everything. NIH documents, CDC, World Health stuff. And like you said, you can be a data analyst, and you start reading the fact that they are putting all this stuff out there. If you wanted to find the information to disprove everything, they've put it all out there.
Yeah. That's one of my things that I've had this conversation. We only started talking about really in depth, like we've joked about COVID since, the beginning. But I've gotten to the point where I've been kind of pushed to the edge, where it's like, this doesn't make a lot of these things don't make sense anymore. Like, I'm not going to get into, like, I've had people, actually last week, someone said something about the vaccines and, their Bill Gates is chipping us and they're magnetic. I'm like, I'm not going there. Like, right. It's fun. If you want to go there and have fun with it, you can, but I get stuck at the numbers just don't, like, we talked about it a couple episodes ago where they went right when they rolled the shot out for the 5 to 11 year olds.
Yeah.
So there's just using the CDC's data and just facts and data. There's 40 plus million kids that age. There's been 6 million of them that have tested positive for corona, and only 170 of them have died from corona. 400 of them have died from the flu. And 10,000 have died from other causes since the whole beginning of this thing. So let's be focused on the 10,000 that's what's concerning to me. I don't want kids to die.
Yeah.
But if we're going to be concerned about the health crisis and we're going to be concerned about data and facts and numbers, then what about those 10,000 kids? Or what about the over 500,000 people that die every year from cardiac related illnesses? Like, just using the numbers, it just doesn't, like, that's where I start. Like, I stop right there because it just doesn't make sense. So, like, forget the Bill Gates trying to chip us, or George Soros is trying to depopulate the world, or, like, that's fun. But if we're having a serious conversation, we're starting off right at the bat, none of it makes sense to me.
Public health is where they started with this. Yeah. And And like I said, my simple commentary is based on like a lot of reading. I've spent a ton of time. And Tony knows this. Like, and I don't even mean to. It's almost to the point where I used to love reading novels and books and all kinds of stuff. And my wife knows that, and she's almost like, it's almost unhealthy amount of time you spend on this. I'm like, I don't know, is it? Because you can't like now navigate the world without having some knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm not reading the Dan Brown novels, the fiction stuff anymore, because it's like, all right, that's a waste of time. Even though some of those fiction novels are probably projecting some realities, and maybe they are, like George Orwell.
Yeah, 1980. Yeah.
But
Animal Farm, like-
I talk to older people, and it's like I don't mind it being a personal choice. Like there's a lot of shit that you can read about it, but if you think the cost benefits are there for you, but to force everybody to do it, that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
And then you go from, all right, public health, we talked about, shouldn't be allowed to make a profit, especially if the government's spending all this money on this stuff.
I'll just print more. It's fine.
Yeah, I know.
50%.
A whole nother different.
It's got to be worth 35%.
All right, so like I said, and this is the logic game you try to play with people. It's like we've gone from public health, they shouldn't be allowed to make a profit. It's like if these things were doing for the world what they say they were, why aren't they sharing the formulas? It should be open source. Mm-hmm. All of this should be on an open source database somewhere where everybody's looking at it, reading about it, and for their country doing what's best for their countries as well. And then you listen to the interviews of the people explain to you why, and one of those people might have the initials of BG, and it's like you listen to that guy talk, and it's just like the way he moves his hands and his eye contact. You're like, I've never seen a worse liar in my entire life than that person.
Speaking of it, did you see the clip of him talking about Epstein?
Yeah, we
Where
all
they
saw
asked,
that. Yeah. Well,
he's dead now. So
yeah, I mean, and he
got to be careful.
He got frustrated. I watched the whole thing. He got frustrated because she kept pressing him. But like, when you keep pressing somebody when they don't answer you, and then they give you something like that, you're like, oh, okay, you made it a lot of now.
Yeah, but dude, why wouldn't she press him? Like, I'm not saying he did anything wrong, but you were associated with someone who was on an island of fucking pedophilia.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm surprised that she was pressing him because he was willing to do an interview, obviously, because it was on PBS. And I was shocked that she pressed him, but like, even just an ounce of him being pressed turned into a very monstrous response at the end.
I couldn't believe that when he said that. I was like, wait, did he really just say that?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know if anybody watched his interview on MSNBC in Davos from like 3 years ago, where they were talking about, and I can send you somebody made a short clip of it after the fact, and it's hysterical because they started the clip out, and then they play that, I don't know what the music is, where like things sound like they're getting crazier and crazier. Right. I don't know the name of the jingle, but the clip starts off with her, and this was 3 years ago, pre Rona, and they're talking about his philanthropy, but like investments in these biopharmaceutical type companies, and he's talking about. And, he does this a lot, and it's just kind of like, what the fuck, man? That's just
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah, it's like the Ricky Bobby thing. And and she's asking him like in an impressive manner about like, oh, your investments in these things and the return on investments with these things, and she's like, you're not talking about like if you had just invested it in the S&P 500 and reinvested dividends, you're talking about a 3 to 4% return on investment, all this stuff. She's like, you're talking about a 20 to 1 return on investment, and he's like, yeah, you're talking about 10 to 20 to 1 return on, and like he can't help but smile like while he's talking about this stuff either, and it's just like,
because he knows.
Yeah, it's like I want to go back to the Matrix where I grew up. I want to go back to where I grew up. I just want to get the corporate gig and enjoy it, like he said, sit in the backyard with the kids and not have to think that this shit's really happening. But then they end the thing with like, you're talking about like $200 billion like return on investment, when you're talking about 20 to 1, he's invested 10 and getting 200 billion in return. And then they played the rest of the video, and it ended with him being like, it's been the best investment of my life. That's how they ended the video, and that was a legitimate interview that you can go out and watch on MSNBC, where he's interviewed by one of the female correspondents from the like business side of MSNBC. It's like they started, and you have to see it, and I'll send it to you guys later. And that's when you're just like, it's just like, it's so obvious. And he was the one trying to explain why they wouldn't share the formulas. Like, well, why won't you open source this stuff? And initially his excuse was like, well, these are clean facilities. Like, you know what it takes to like manufacture this type of stuff. It's like semiconductors, medical, bio stuff, clean. You can't just open one of these factories up overnight. And then one of the countries like got on the news the next day and be like, we've got like 4 idled like factories for this type of clean operation.
Yeah, we're
like,
ready to go. Open
Like,
source it.
If this is like gonna save lives, like let's do it. Nothing.
Right. There's definitely some fuckery that goes on, and
Too
I wonder
Chicanery.
how much because we talk about like how technology and the exponential growth of it is, in one hand, really screwing us over as a human race. Some of the things that talk about social media networks and all these different things and the algorithms and whatnot, but at the same time, like without this technological growth, like I wonder, they're not able to hide their chicanery anymore because people find out about it, like, and people are leaking it, and not necessarily to bring this up, but this is a really good example of like the Rittenhouse case. If you didn't see the video, if the video wasn't there, it's already up. It already looks bad, the whole situation. But if you didn't see the video, it would sound really, really, really bad. But then you see the video, and it's like, oh, well, this wasn't what I was being told what it was. So now, like, whether it be government officials or these corporations, whether they're polluting and doing all the different things, or like the Stephen Donziger, I don't know if you're familiar with his case. He was basically part of a lawsuit. Was it Chevron? It was one of the big down in they were like destroying the rainforest, and now he's sitting in jail because he wouldn't give up his laptop to this corporation that he was like suing, and like all these just now. But now we're seeing all this stuff play out, and it's like, oh, you guys have been doing this for decades, but now we can just see the fuckery.
I think it's a generational thing, but there's still a lot of people that just don't want to look. It's pretty hard to sit in a room with 4 people that don't think any one of us is crazy. It's legitimately
right. Well, I think I had this conversation with a friend the other day. They're like, they were like kind of upset. Like, me, like, why all these people see this shit? Like, why? How can people not like see this?
How can you just not see it?
Yeah, well, because they're not one, they're not looking for it, and if you're not looking for it, and 2, they don't want to see it. They're going to work, they're busy.
They're complacent and comfortable.
Right. They're working a full-time job. They're taking care of their family.
It's more than that.
They got a new season of their favorite TV show to watch when they get home.
But if you admit one thing, like if, you can't change somebody's opinion. Like even if you think you did, they still have the same opinion.
No, they have to do it for themselves.
Right. And so they don't want to look. And that's what I've kind of figured out. And, my wife's a good example. Like, she doesn't want to hear or see or know any of this stuff for the most part. But she started looking because she has a medical background. With this stuff, she started looking. And I think it's kind of driving her nuts because it's like, hey, I'm 10 or 12 years conditioned into this feeling of knowing and understanding that I'm being lied to all the time. I don't mean that jokingly. We're lied to all the time. When the FDA comes out and does you're not a horse, you're not a cow, like, people, please stop. It's like, well, that's a bold-faced lie just in and of basic facts. And Tony knows what I'm talking about. It's like,
we've talked about this.
Yeah, and it's just like, that's the FDA. So it's like, if they're willing to tweet something so ignorant and stupid as that, it's like, all right. A lot of things they've done probably over the last 30 years and beyond and into the future, most of them are probably lies. And so it's like, something as basic as they told you that, taking aspirin during COVID or they told you that was bad. And everything I've read is this is more of a blood disease than like a cold or a congestion or like a lung disease. Like, it starts as more of a blood disease, works its way in, and you can kind of understand the whys, and it's like, well, now they're telling you not to take aspirin. So they've known, because you can read it in their own papers, and I have. It's like it's more of a blood-related disease, and they're telling you not to take aspirin. Well, what does aspirin do? It thins your blood a little bit,
Right.
which is good for you if you're dealing with a
inflammatory cardiovascular.
Yeah. And Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm just one that sits on the toilet and plays one on the internet.
Right.
And so, and when people, like, I realized that probably 12 years ago with other things, and I don't know if it was always just my nature, because I remember arguing with, my uncles and cousins and stuff, and it's just like, I don't ever tell people I know anything. And my uncle reads books that confirm his biases and opinions of subject matter. And I didn't know anything about this JFK assassination stuff, and we ain't going there because I don't know shit about it. But
I know that bullet was not.
Yeah,
I've seen a picture of the bullet, and that didn't go through somebody. I'll tell you that.
I've watched the Seinfeld episode about the magic loogie to get the premise of what happened for JFK, and it's like I remember being at a holiday, and he was telling me about all this and that, and I'm like, how do you know? He's like, well, I read this book. I'm 100% certain. And it almost turned into a fist fight with my uncle because I'm like, but you weren't there. Like, you still have no idea, right?
I see you.
And he's like,
know the earth is round either, Tony.
What's that?
Why you have to go there?
Whatever.
I joke a lot about I don't know that the earth is round because I've never been high enough to see the curvature. So
see, I consider that a mature comment. I consider that mature. Whether you're right, you don't know if you're right or wrong is your point.
Yeah, I believe that the earth is spherical or whatever the name is for, because it's like an oblong
whatever.
sphere.
I don't care what you believe.
Yeah, I believe it is, but I don't know.
If you were a NASA astronaut that I trusted, and I would believe you then if you said this is this, I'd be like, all right, I feel closer to actual anecdote than anything. And then no different than my experience with Tony and his work, which we won't discuss. I feel closer to the truth because of an anecdote of somebody that I know and trust who's done things that he's telling me that he believes versus anything I read on the internet. But at least it opens your mind to understanding you don't know anything. And the minute that you can at least admit that, and that you are probably being lied to 99% of the time, you can then start to think for yourself.
Yeah,
and that's it.
That's the key, because I think it's realizing that you don't know. You only know what you know.
Hmm?
So you don't know what you don't know. And when you realize that there's so many things that you can't prove yourself. So that if you can't prove it yourself, that means you don't know it.
Yeah.
And just looking at questioning things, like to question everything. And a lot of people, like, especially like, I don't know if it was QAnon that like had the whole like question everything, or that, we have the Great Awakening map hanging up because it's fun.
I don't know anything about it, but it looks cool.
Oh, it's the like lizard aliens and Nazis have like a base in Antarctica and all this stuff.
Joking. I've touched all.
Yeah, I'm sure if you kind of, but question everything doesn't mean, well, I think there are lizard aliens that are drinking adrenochrome under Clinton's basement. Just because I question one thing doesn't mean I think it's all craziness, or just because I question a vaccine or I have questions about a vaccine doesn't mean I'm an anti-vaxxer.
No,
like
all the terminology itself is psychological warfare, all of it. I mean, even the term conspiracy theorist is like a critical thinker. You could say the same thing. Like it's all being done on purpose. Like everybody knows this. These terms are being used. Anti-vaxxer was created to be used as propaganda, no different than horse paste or whatever. And like I said, I don't know Adam from Eve, and that was the joke about the JFK story. Like, I'm like, because even my cousins all started piling in, and it was like, fuck, like they're like, if you're saying that, then like you don't fucking believe anything, and it's like, I'm not saying that. I was like, I don't know anything. I go, and I'm willing to admit it.
Right.
I go, but I'm going to operate in this world trying to do the best I can with what I think I might know. I mean, it turned into like a huge brawl of like, you can't keep saying that because you're always going to win the argument then. I'm like,
Who said?
not, I go,
who
not
said anything
unless
about
you,
winning an argument.
yeah,
Gosh.
I go, not unless you were there. I go, if you were on that fucking grassy knoll and I know you and I trust you and you tell me what you know and what you saw, I go, then I'll believe you. 90%. It's not even the Tony. Like, if you tell me what's happening and what you've done and what you know and what you've seen, I'm going to believe you. Do I think whatever you're doing is a silver bullet? Probably not. It might not work on people. It might not help some people. These bodies are so weird and confusing, like it might not.
Right.
But in generalities, like you have to navigate the world in generalities with what you think and what you know. And you only know what, for the most part, you can touch and see and feel and have done for yourself. That's why everybody's paradigm is so constructed of their own experience that it's like, I don't expect you to, if you start on these topics, and I know that, you know, with your poster and friendships, that we can enter at a level that we're copacetic here, where we can talk about it. But I told Tony a lot, and my wife knows too. I'm like, I operate in a world that you guys would just throw up if you even just lived in my world for a day. It would make you puke.
Why did he say that?
I mean, this is like people who believe. I mean, I talk to people who believe that what's happening is the right thing to do and for public health, and that these people that are being fired are stupid, and that we need to get rid of these. But I live with these people day to day. I don't know. Maybe you do. I could be wrong. I'm in a much more corporatized, white collar like existence where it's like, are you hearing yourselves? Like
Right.
these were your friends. These were people that you respected as colleagues, and that you respected their work. And now you're like, they shouldn't be here because of this.
Right.
And I was like, dude, we started at, you know, the 2 weeks to shorten the curve to not over inundate hospitals so that we could reach herd immunity, to this bastion, this bastard of whatever it is that we're doing today. It's like, how did we go from that, where we were just like trying to mellow this out, to, you know, and even like any company was worried about like sending you home and your mental health. Like, let's talk about that. Like, we were doing virtual happy hours. Are you okay? Right. How are things going? Are you set up? Do you need anything? To firing you before you're even like coming back to work.
Yeah, and there's even some people that are even going above and beyond that, and
there are,
you know, saying if you don't, you know, take the vaccine or whatever, like, okay, then you shouldn't be given health care at all.
Some of these other countries are doing some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Austria is locked everybody down. Australia's been a police state for a while now, but I think part of it too is, and I've realized this from. I was never on Twitter at all.
I'm not on Twitter yet.
I just recently got on, because mainly it was just for the show. Honestly, I was off almost every single social media app until we started this, and then I started like, all right, well, gotta kind of put it out there so people can connect with it, whatever. But realizing this from Twitter, I really saw it where the loudest people speak most frequently, and the most extreme people are the loudest that speak most frequently, and particularly in spaces like that. You know, so I think people just say shit just to get a rise out of people. And especially online, I don't know. There's most of the time, I think probably 75% of the interactions online, Twitter and Instagram and even Facebook, are fake interactions. They're the troll farms. Or have you I always like to use have you ever watched The Dissident? It's who was it? Brian Fogel is a documentary that he did about Jamal Khashoggi. Really good. But he talks about that. But in that, they touch on that Saudi Arabia has like a giant room of just Twitter propaganda people. Like I think there was like 50 to 100 people in the room. Yeah. And each of them had like 50 accounts. And it's just constant. Like, you don't think other countries are doing that, like, and all that? So, like, how many, like...
It only takes you 5 seconds to go read, like, Facebook comments to see, like, oh, I agree, oh, this I support, this makes sense. Like, just go on, like, Frontline. Like, I follow Frontline on Facebook. Is it Frontline? Frontline? It's like a BBC or a I don't know.
I'm not familiar.
It's like a PBS thing, Frontline.
Gotcha.
I don't know what it is. And like just to go in and read the comments, like when they post an article, it's just like it can't be real. Like these people can't be real. Like this can't be real.
Yeah, and to even think you're going to have some kind of meaningful conversation.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, you almost have to, like I said, you have to disband a lot of that. But like going back to like, can you talk to people anymore? It's almost like you can't.
Yeah, I think in the
really
corporate
tough.
setting, it makes it really hard because you're constantly afraid of, all right, what am I going to say that someone like that one person's going to take out of context and they're going to report me and I'm going to lose my job for saying something that, you know.
I'll make Tony talk. I'm going to use the restroom. You got to tell a story now.
I don't know what story I'm telling.
I don't know. If I feel like I don't know. You're looking at me like
yeah,
I'm
we can
crazy
pause
now.
it. That's all right.
No, I'm listening, man.
We'll do a pause.
Fire away. Go ahead.
We'll do a pause.
Go ahead.
This razor thing when you try to get a little outside the box on what could really be going on.
Right.
Yeah, but fuck, man, if the horse beats don't point to a horse, like, you better start looking at zebras, the law of parsimony.
Or maybe the most likely situation is that the government's trying to do a bunch of fuckery.
People
and people aren't paying attention.
I mean, it doesn't take a scientist to watch enough movies to know that people have been doing fuckery, and Occam's razor is usually not the right answer.
Maybe it is. They like to think
sometimes
in different simplicity. Like
I think in a small setting where something goofy happens, you can play Occam's razor, but in a large setting and this is kind of what's that?
Pull it a
little closer.
Yeah.
I think in a large setting of like when you're looking at what's going on today, you have to realize that it's there's a massive amount of coordination that is required to pull these things off.
Yeah. And I don't even know if I'd go as far as say coordination. I think there's a couple of things that that I've just learned in the last couple years is the amount of interactions and different things that are happening. So we had a guy on who's like a China expert, and he really talked about like global. He's like a historical kind of geopolitical, like that's his thing. But he talks about just how all the different countries working together and all these different things happen. And, one little thing can just change so much. Mm-hmm. And when you have people, when you put people into the mix, people are messy, funny, weird creatures that do things that some people we don't think should be done. Like if you're talking about nature, all right, the simplest answer is more than likely the right one. I get that. But people aren't simple. People aren't straightforward. And then when you start putting millions and millions of them together in these tribal units and then connecting them with other tribal units around the world, like we're in a situation now with the technology and everything that I think we need to learn from history, but we have to realize that we are in new territory with so many different things. And I think that's one thing that people kind of leave out of the equation is like, well, the simplest answer is probably the right one. Okay, well, the simplest answer might be when you're dealing with humans, good fucking luck. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like
when you're dealing with humans, yes. When you're dealing with people who've gotten to where they are based on belief systems that none of us can understand or not a part of, I still go back to the coordination. I mean, you couldn't be president of the United States.
No,
I promise.
No, there's no way.
So
especially not after doing this show, like they find that shit.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like when you talk about coordination, and I think it's because I'm starting to see it at a corporate level of all these people sit on each other's boards, and not to be conspiratorial, but like the CEO of Reuters, the news organization, is on the board of Pfizer. It's like, all right, and these are just small causal connections. If you really wanted to like build a web,
there's a ton of them. You look at Scott Gottlieb.
Who's that?
I think it's Scott Gottlieb. He's a major contributor on CNBC, which he used to be the head of the FDA. Mm-hmm. And I think he sits, is it Pfizer or what? It's one of them. He sits on one of their boards.
I think it was Pfizer, yeah.
And it's like,
so that's like, where I get.
There's just too many connections. Like
that's where I get with coordination. It's just kind of like, And there's a lot of new buzzwords and lingos going around in business, and they're, without going into a lot of detail, it feels like more coordination of events. Companies wanting to work with companies that have similar beliefs and things like that. So I don't know where that's going. It could be a good thing because, I mean, some of it's around environmental and governance and social stuff, and they're placing a high importance on it. And anytime something new comes out, lingo-wise, you're just kind of like, who's making this stuff up? And I don't know. It's tricky because it's just like very well coordinated. It's no different than what we're experiencing, and the fact that they're calling it public health, but they won't talk about anything else but one thing.
Anything else healthy?
Yeah, anything else healthy. Now I know we're energy drinks and bourbon and stuff, but that's a different story. So it's hard because I see it, and I've talked off the record about it with people, and it's just kind of like, where does this end? Because they're not giving anything back. They're never going to give it back.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a slippery slope. And I've found myself in the middle of it. And I'm not happy with where I'm at with things. And that's where we talk about, that old school vision of success and what it looks like and who you are today versus, I've talked about to some degree, it's just like this stuff is almost so overwhelming that like you feel like you're pulling further out of the matrix, and you're like, I'm just ready to burn it all down and go somewhere and start over.
Yeah, but where? Like, how do you know what I mean? You realize
that's the tricky question. Tony and I have talked, and he's joked with me. He's like, yeah, I hear you, bro. I hear you. But, there's this to think about. So, I mean, and it's redefining what does it mean to take care of your family? What does it mean to protect your family? So, if I'm on the outside looking in, if I can create an atmosphere where they can be insulated or isolated, whatever word you want to use.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. And then there is no answer. Tony and I have talked about it. I'll talk about it today. There is no right or wrong answer. Selling out versus doing it for your family versus being a man. Those blurred lines are very confusing now. Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, we've had the discussion a lot, but particularly with, I think there's nothing that makes it more real, I think, for the average person than the vaccine mandate, because it's now it's putting people on a spot. If you we'll put the anti-vaxxer and all the conspiracies aside. If you look at it just from the standpoint of, I don't think I need this. I'm a healthy individual. My chances of, health without the vaccine are very, very good. I don't have a fear of this thing. And it really struck me personally about 6 months to 9 months ago when all the data started coming out where, okay, you can still get it. So you can still contract it. You can still contract COVID. You can still, spread COVID. Yeah. You can still get sick from it. All right, maybe it's lessened, but if I can still give it to somebody else, and if I can still get it and give it, what is it? What's the difference there? So now it's more of a statistical thing where I don't feel like I need it. Yeah. I don't feel like my kids need it because they're, healthy. I've even said it before, like I would suggest if you're older, if you're overweight, all these different things. All right, I get it. Yeah, it makes sense. Like it might be a really.
I know.
If we're just talking about I get it, but why are we forcing this thing on people that doesn't do what you said it was going to do? If they don't need it, and now all of a sudden it's, well, now you can no longer provide for your family unless you do get it, and it's like, ooh, like this is putting us in a really weird position where
it's pretty uncharted territory.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, and I get why people get so upset about it, because it's like, well, do you do it just so you can keep working your 9 to 5 and keep making the payments on the 2 cars and the house and the boat and all these things, or it's, and then some people will look at that, well, they don't think about it, well, I don't think it's dangerous, I don't think the vaccine's going to kill me. Well, that's I'm not necessarily saying that either. That's not the point. The point is, if I don't need something, how am I being forced by a government to do it to take care in order to take care of my family? That's concerning.
It's astounding to see, and even the retroactive aspect of it, like they're still forcing you to take the same one that they created a year ago or however long ago it was created. And it was like, we've known, and they'll admit and talk about how these things are mutating, as has every virus known to man. So it's like, all right, well, you built one to fight something that might not even really be as prevalent, if at all, today.
Yeah, and the studies have come out that show that after, I love it, most of the studies I've seen, or like the information they provide, is like the 3 to 5 month. Like, oh, this is, it wanes, maybe about 10% from like 3 to 5 months. All right, well, when you look at after that, it starts continuing to decrease at the same rate.
Yeah.
So it's like, so after 10 months, it's, all right, now it's like 30% effective. And then what's it after a year? What's it after a year and a half, 2 years? Like, well, why do you think they're approving boosters for everybody? Yeah. Because the protection against it wanes over time. So is this where we're at? Are we everyone okay with just every 6 months you gotta get another shot? Like, what if it's every 2 months? Like, when is all this circular ridiculousness? Like, when's it okay? I think it's never better. The best example of it was the lab leak hypothesis, where if you talked about that for the first year, kicked off of all platforms. Yeah. You're completely shut out. And now it's, oh, well, yeah, that's a thing. And now, I don't know if I sent you guys, I saw a headline where it was Anthony Fauci was saying that, like, well, basically gain of function research is a meaningless term.
I watched the video.
I was like, what? What do you mean it's a meaningless term? Like, that doesn't even, like, those are words put together in a sentence. So they mean something. And like when people, I don't see how people can see stuff like that and just go, oh, okay, well, no big deal.
It's because they're not willing to look. They're not willing to look. It's that plain and simple. That's why I try to keep, and maybe I'm good at it because of the environment that I'm in. I try to keep things so basic that it's like, you can't actually argue with me. You can't. Because you cannot argue with me about public health, which is what most people quote.
Right.
You cannot argue with me that profit should be involved in public health, especially if most of the people that are taking the public health angle don't necessarily even believe in profit to begin with.
Right.
From a politics or an economics perspective. So I continue, and maybe it's because I do this for a living. When I explain things to people, it can get very complicated. You're talking about any business, anything. Even if you're trying to explain to somebody, why cutting this tree down costs $5,000 versus cutting that tree down costs $1,000. It's like, if you go into 50 reasons why it costs $5,000 to cut that tree down, they think you're full of shit. But if you give them like 2 reasons where you're like, extra equipment and it's fucking 20 feet taller, and you just say that over and over again, they'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But I deal with people every day that try to like start putting their own thoughts, and they start going on tangents and they can't bring them back. And it's like, now these people think you have no credibility. So you've explained something away. You had the right reasons. You knew the reasons you did it. And then you went off on like 6 tangents, and these people think you're full of shit now. Like, it's that simple from like a negotiation or just doing a typical business discussion. This topic is the same thing. Public health, profit, open source. End of story. Like, you can go in 1,000 different directions and they think you're nuts. And I've been reading this stuff for 2 years or whatever. And it's the same thing. You can start explaining to somebody, hey, they've moved the goalposts. What do you mean? Well, they're changing definitions. Well, you're full of shit. They're not doing that. It's like, well, how do you know?
So that's the one that aggravates me the most.
It's like, well, how do you? It's like, well, how do you know? It's like, well, I have screenshots of the old one. I have screenshots of the new ones. Like, yeah, but like that's on the internet, or that could be fake. Could be. You're right. Maybe. I'm like, but I remember reading it in the beginning.
Yeah. Not to mention we've discussed the CDC terms on this podcast.
Yeah. No, and they continue to move the goalpost. But even if you bring that stuff up, you just have to go back to public health, profits, open source. Like, where are we at? Like, this is not right. Things are not right. This makes no sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, then we should just all adopt Pascal's wager and tell paternalism to fuck right off, and we each just take our own chance.
Yeah. I mean,
You're gonna have to explain that. I didn't understand a word you just said.
Pascal's wager was basically like the idea that like, oh, there's a heaven or there's not a heaven.
Okay.
And it was like, well, I'm not going to argue with you, but you just do what you need to do, and if I go to heaven and you don't, then that's the end result.
Okay.
So basically, like, you do what you need to do for your family, I'll do what I need to do for mine.
Yeah.
But paternalism was obviously, hey, you need to get this vaccine because the government thinks they know better than you do what's appropriate for your health. So it's just, hey, send it, disintegrate the paternalism, fuck right off, and we'll just see what happens at the end of it.
Yeah. That's the when I go back to coordination, like the abilities to continue to march forward with what is out there and known, to me, is astounding. It's just astounding. And like I said, I joke with people, and I mean this because it's like I've been trying like hell just to get through this and understand it. And it almost felt like I was about to step over the finish line from a mandate and whatever standpoint. And I say this to people that I work with, like, I just, at my age and statistically, to me, it just seemed like, and my wife agrees, I felt like I was just doubling down on risk. And it's like, all right, and I play blackjack all the time. So the double down thing to me is a funny gambling term. But it's like, if I've got a 17 and the dealer's showing a 10, I will not double down that hand to save my life. I'll lose, almost guaranteed. So I'm like doing both, getting vaccinated or getting COVID, because I don't know. I mean, like you said, lab leak, whatever. If you get COVID, I don't know what it's going to do. And like, if you get it and it affects you,
right.
I'm just doing the best I can with information that I have, but I don't know what could happen. I know that it could be bad. I also know that drinking a lot can be bad, or I know that driving on the highway can be bad, and I know a lot of things that can be bad. But to knowingly just double down to protect yourself against something, it's like putting fucking 2 seatbelts on. It's like, I don't need 2 seatbelts. I got one. Like, I'm going to use this one. Double down. Like, why double down? I didn't get it. And I told my boss that, and he understood, and we're all trying to follow along with the way the world is moving. And people get it, and it was just at some point it was like, that was my reason. I was like, I thought I got through it and I beat it. Like, I thought I beat the timeline. Like, we're almost 2 years in. Most people would be like, everybody's like so fucking tired of talking about it. They're like, I thought this was fucking over. It was almost over, right? Like, is it not? And I'm like, yeah, I thought I beat it. I thought I got to the finish line, and then it was like, all right, no, you could potentially. I'm not saying what they aren't doing, but like a lot of companies doing the same thing. Like, you could be terminated for not, adhering to company policies. It's happening at hospitals and all over the place.
I've been a nurse at this same facility for 12 years.
You got a nurse here.
And I have 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get fired.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
My
that.
provider, who I had a screenshot from the CDC, they said there was no safety data for individuals with autoimmune diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have 2.
Mm-hmm.
Celiac being one of them.
Celiac being one of them. Wow.
Yeah,
I got
my
you.
wife doesn't want it.
Yeah, and so I showed it to him, and he said, they're wrong. It's not up to date.
Yeah.
We have plenty of stats to prove that it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. That's the doctor thing is astounding.
No one will write a medical exemption.
And the same doctor
No.
would use the CDC as reference to why you should get it.
Yeah.
So,
which is why I went to the CDC. Like, this is what you're using, so I'm going to bring it to you so you
can understand it in your own language.
And nobody will write a medical exemption.
Every company is different, but I found that from what I've heard and know, the medical community is more open to granting religious exemptions because that is fanciful stuff that they can't understand. Mm. The business community is more apt to accept a medical exemption because they don't want to know what's wrong with you. But religion to them is you're making shit up. Like, it's bullshit. And the Pope came out and endorsed it, so like Catholics are out. The Mormons came out and endorsed, like, so Christianity, all this stuff. It's like, you know, you have to have some pretty obscure religion from some very potentially far off culture to be like, oh,
go with the spaghetti god.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's like in the business community. I don't know what the medical community is doing, and from an offline standpoint, I don't know if I could point you in the right direction later, but that's been what I know, and I know a lot of people that work in those areas, and Tony and I have talked about it to some degree, and he's talked to his doctors about it, and you know, they're quoting stuff. I don't know if they ever followed up with you or not.
So it did, but they never. Well, I knew the answer to the question I asked. I said, "Are there any longitudinal studies on an mRNA vaccine that's actually been launched?"
I know, because people will be like, "This isn't new technology." I'm like,
"Yeah." They're like, "Well,
no, it's not new at all, but it's never been used before because a lot of
their infectious disease doc was like, well, if something happens, it's going to be within the first 2 months, and by sheer population alone, you should be able to understand that there's not adverse effects." And I'm like,
Did you see that? Did you read that?
I read it.
That link that I sent you today?
I 100% read it about the inflammatory.
Yeah.
But,
so,
Tony, you're obviously a nurse practitioner.
Not for long.
I don't care.
How long does it take until somebody is actually diagnosed with an autoimmune disease? Your symptoms start gradually. It takes a patient how long to come and complain? How long then does it take a provider to go, you know what? Some of those symptoms, they line up with whatever. So let's do lab work. I mean, sometimes it's months.
Yeah.
Years.
And then a year, like for an actual diagnosis.
Or it's a disease of exclusion where you have to order all kinds of tests until nothing makes sense.
Else out. Absolutely.
And then you go, oh, I guess it's probably this because nothing else fit.
Or you're like Michaela Peterson, who has to like go on a meat-only diet to figure out what's wrong with her.
Yeah. So how would we know that that's not happening? Right? Like, I work in a doctor's office. I know that they're not keeping track of this. There's nowhere that they're like, this patient had this immunization 4 months ago, and now they're coming in with migraines, you know, whatever. They're not fucking doing that. I know they're not, because that's what I do.
Because that's very controlled studies to be able to look at those things. So, since we're on the topic, and you can, I get you. And you can correct me. I'll try to make it what my understanding of that study was. So there was a study out in California. I don't remember the facility that was doing it. But they were doing a study for years about, what was it? They registered like 5 different protein signatures in people's blood work, and they had a set amount of people that they were doing this regular testing. And this, I think it goes all the way back to, I want to say it was like 2016. Mm-hmm. But so they've been doing this for something obviously completely different than COVID. And within the first 2 months after these groups finishing their second dose of the vaccine, it was 2.5 times the amount of inflammatory type issues they were having in their cardiovascular system. Uh-huh. And it was just like so. It was very medical, and I was like, oh, like I think this is that kind of basically.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get to read the whole thing, just
it's
the
real
abstract,
short
because I did.
Just the abstract.
Not.
Yeah.
I just didn't have access to the article, but it was along the lines of mRNA COVID vaccine dramatically increase endothelial inflammatory markers and ACS risk as measured by the PULS cardiac test. A warning. And like you said, it goes back to monitoring this for a while. These were the trends they saw. They had these 5 markers that had to do with inflammatory processes. All of a sudden, things started to increase after we released these mRNA vaccines, and they're like, what is going on?
Yeah, and it was that change, because it wasn't like, they started, the reason I really liked that one, quote unquote, was because it wasn't something that they were doing to look at the vaccines. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the point. Like, they've been doing this for years before this was ever a thing. And then all of a sudden, all of their, patients or test subjects or whatever they are, within that time frame of having their second dose, their markers more than doubled for this thing. And it was like, hey, guys, this is a thing. Like,
Yeah,
just
that was
putting
the American Heart Association journal. That wasn't just some bullshit journal either.
Right.
Well, and you have to go look. You have to go looking for it though. Like
Oh
most
yeah,
people
dude,
aren't.
you won't see that on CNN.
No, you got to go looking for it.
right. So
You gotta
just
have
seeing those,
somebody-
it's like
Probably
hey,
won't see Ghislaine Maxwell on CNN either. But,
Yeah, but you know,
Yeah, didn't that just start?
it did.
yeah, yeah. You also what you won't see is that other case where that guy was
Coffee.
Coffee was acquitted or not or found innocent of all charges.
Who?
It was
Coffey?
it was
Not the Green Mile, not that John Coffee.
John Coffey.
Different
no.
Coffee.
I think it was what's his name, Andrew. Andrew
Yeah, I
Coffey?
think so.
It was a similar situation as Rittenhouse,
Uh-huh.
but he's a black gentleman.
Uh-huh.
So they're not talking about that one.
Wow, I mean, and like you said, like the joke Tony made. I mean, I sent the meme out the other day. It was like the only thing we got from the Maxwell case is a court sketch. I was like, we've got 7,000 pictures of Kyle and everybody involved on in live feeds on the stands. It's like I'd rather watch the other one, frankly.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm really curious as to the things that are coming out in that because
I mean, I knew the Rittenhouse kid was screwed no matter what. Even though he's been acquitted, he's still screwed.
oh yeah,
But you know, it's tough because it's like, you know, there are at least arguments to be made for everything.
True.
And that's-
Hold on, let me ask for some, and I don't know how close you guys followed this, but let me ask for some clarification if you guys did follow that. So I saw a couple things I didn't know like how valid they were, but it seemed like people kept arguing the crossing state lines thing,
Yeah.
and I didn't his dad lived like 20 minutes from where those things happened, but he was in Wisconsin, so it wasn't actually crossing state lines.
No, his mom lived 20 miles from Kenosha, Wisconsin.
But wasn't
He
there
lived-
a parent
yes.
that lived in this state? that the
Yes.
incident
No,
happened?
His
no,
dad
no.
and his grandparents.
That's what I thought.
His dad lived in
In
Kenosha,
yeah.
Wisconsin.
Okay,
And
And he didn't bring the gun across.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
line.
and that was the other thing.
And
so
he
like
worked
the
there.
gun wasn't brought across. He worked there, and wasn't it? Couldn't you own a rifle in that state at the age of 17?
Yes.
You can own long rifles, not handguns.
Which was, and it was a
was a long
AR-15
rifle,
long
yeah,
rifle.
yeah.
So basically, every argument that it was debunked by that right there.
You guys know Barry Weiss, correct? She used to work for the New York Times.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
on Joe Rogan a couple times. She actually wrote an article. I have it.
Send it. Send it.
Yeah, she basically outlined the whole thing.
Okay.
In what you're talking about was like, and she's just so disappointed. And I mean, they first they made it more of a racist narrative, and it was like,
How?
I,
Weren't the guys that owned the store that he was defending Arab?
I don't know.
And the three guys
I think
were
a lot
white?
of the protests were BLM, but people tagging along.
It's because it was white people
Yeah, send
marching,
you the Barry.
supporting black people, and that's why it's white supremacy.
yeah. The Barry Weiss.
I am just
Yeah.
So it's not
transporting
not
information I've
the
seen. Tony.
incident at hand with 3 white people and 2 Arab people's store who was being defended. It's outside of the case. It had
was-
nothing to do with the case.
Because
while he
there was a BLM protest going on at the time in the
Oh,
city.
Because the 3
tertiary
victims
facts.
were
Yes.
supporting
Yeah.
BLM. Yes.
Yeah. So to kind of touch on the factual things is, so he lived 30 minutes away.
Mhm.
The state line. He literally lived with his mom on the state line.
Okay.
So he drove 30 minutes. He was 20 miles away to his dad's, and I think his aunt and stuff lived there too. And that's where the gun was at. So when you think about that, like they conveniently take out where he's at, how close he was. Cause
Sure.
I mean, so when I go to the grocery store, I typically don't go local for grocery. I'll go to Sam's Club.
Oh, dude, I'll drive
That's right.
15, 20 minutes easily.
I drive 45 minutes when I go grocery shopping. So, okay. Just and what's the state line?
Mhm.
It's just an imaginary border. So
No.
stop it. The gun he was legal. He's a legal age to have it. And he was getting chased, kicked, hit with a skateboard, and then a gun pointed at him.
Hold on. Even
That's what-
prior to that, didn't he put out like a dumpster fire or something?
Yeah. So
I don't know if that's true. I just
I sent you the article. She
Yeah.
okay.
summed
So-
it up pretty
okay.
well.
yeah, my biggest thing is it's because I didn't watch the court case. I didn't actually watch it because I saw footage because I follow
Uh-huh.
a bunch of stuff. I'll follow everything from MSNBC, CNN, Fox News.
Tim
I
Pool,
follow
Sagar.
Tim Pool, Sagar. I followed the two. I followed the guys. The one guy, Drew Hernandez. He was in the court case because he took the footage. So I was following him at the time, like through all this. So he was a journalist or whatever people want to call him. He took the footage when it happened. So I saw it like literally the day it happened. So I remember seeing this and like watching this young kid with an AR-15 running down the road, getting chased. He's getting kicked in the face. He's getting hit with a skateboard. And then the guy that lived that he shot had a pistol in his hand. That's fine. I won't even talk about all their backgrounds because it
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It kind of does matter.
No, it depends on the argument. But let me finish. Let me finish real quick.
Okay.
So he got kicked in the face. He got hit with a skateboard, and he was getting approached with a gun pointed at him while he was laying on his back in the middle of a street after running away. Those are the people he shot. Now, if we want to argue, should a 17-year-old kid be in the middle of these riots, protests, whatever, in the middle of the night with an AR-15, that's probably a really bad idea.
Should an 18-year-old kid be in fucking war?
Yeah. That's, but I'm just saying.
Not that much of an age difference.
Wasn't he like, wasn't his grandparents that owned a gas station or something? Isn't that why he was there?
I don't think
initially?
He was. Maybe.
Well, that's a good excuse for a 17-year-old to.
Yeah. All I'm saying is, if you want to make the argument that a 17-year-old kid shouldn't be out there in the middle of the night with a gun during everything that's happening, I get that argument. Because you know what? More than likely, unless I'm directly tied to a property, like, you know what? I'm going to stay out of here. I got a family to attend to. I don't need to be out in the middle of this riot, possibly getting killed. I get that argument. But besides that argument,
survival.
Yeah, besides that argument of he shouldn't have been there, other than that, it's pretty clear cut. It's like, why do you have the gun? Just in case what happened.
And I mean, this is for anybody who's, and I hate to say an echo chamber. I mean, we all agree. We're willing to use logic and critical thinking. I keep going back to that. The thing that still is astounding is the coordination of events and narratives and information.
Yeah, the narratives for sure. Yeah,
but it's coordination. It's no different than Dr. Was it Gupta and Don Lemon and Joe Rogan? That was all coordinated. It wasn't people sitting around trying to talk these things out and figure. And now, granted,
Gupta didn't side with CNN on that.
Nobody shut up when they told him to shut up.
Yeah,
he did shut up. But Rogan said what he said, and then he said they shouldn't have said that. He said they probably shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, but then he had to go back on CNN and
he went back on and
sorry,
got
because he likes a paycheck.
Yeah. And I said, like I said, you could see it on his face, and it's like, I guess I don't blame the guy to some degree, but it's all coordinated. And then you got to wonder, and like you said, human nature, and everybody thinks that the world is made up of too many people and too many people doing their own things for coordination to exist at that level. And it's like, is it though? I mean, at what level? If it's only a couple hundred people meeting every couple times a year and then top-down coordination, that's very possible.
Yeah, I think you can't necessarily coordinate it on a broad scale, and where you're controlling everything. But I think it's. I
don't mean people are coordinating when everybody takes a shit. I just meant you're nudging and you're bumping things in a direction, and people start falling in line. It's no different than the mandates. The government knew OSHA wasn't going to have enough teeth to bite into this, but they accomplished their goal. People are still
people enough to.
No, people are still marching forward with it. Your company, any company that's still creating it as a company policy, then it's
How many industries do you think it would take to stand up against the government to just shut the whole fucking mandate down?
Then you have to wonder. You have to wonder, what is the end goal? What's
of the government or the agencies that are standing up against them?
Of this whole event? Because you have to look at
control.
I mean, you can try to figure out what's the ultimate goal. A lot of things have changed really fast. You're looking at people who want. You're looking at everybody inflating currencies. You're looking at
probably a social credit score.
You're looking at Meta. You're looking at all this stuff.
I said something about the metaverse earlier. She's like, shut your fucking mouth. I don't want to hear it. I was like, well, that was the thing before Zuckerberg made it a thing. But yeah.
I don't know. It's just all happening so fast.
So for my employer, I will say I was happy that we were the last big corporation in Ohio to put the mandate in place because they understand that we're already short-staffed, and how are we supposed to take care of patients if we're even more short-staffed? But we are CMS, which is the Center of Medicare and Medicaid Services. If we don't do the mandate, their patients can't get care from us. So that's all Medicare and Medicaid. So then we don't have a paycheck.
Yeah. So
Right,
Cass, what happens if they said, fuck you, we're not going to do it.
Right,
and
no, I
all those
agree.
patients didn't happen. You don't think that those patients might not fucking rise up and have some sort of a
Exactly.
revolution? You don't think that Cleveland Clinic's footprint, and I don't know, I'm just asking, but that's why I'm asking, how many organizations would it take to stand up before all of a sudden they said, well, you know what, the federal government tried. Whatever happens, happens after this, which is honestly what I feel that they're trying to do and what it may come to, even though a lot of people probably already had to get the vaccine. I just don't think it's realistic. I think at some point people are going to say, you know what, fuck right off. We control this nation. We're the goddamn backbone of everything that we do. We provide the infrastructure, the transport, the shipping, the healthcare, all this stuff. We fucking run the nation.
That would require strong men and strong women in leadership roles, not weak men and weak women.
I think it would
And
only
that's where we're
require
at.
a few strong men and a few strong women
I could
in,
get behind
in
that.
high positions,
I could get behind that.
which they probably don't exist. You work with them.
Or
Yeah,
how about
No
how
diss to
many
your organization.
employees
Not mine.
would it take
It's not just mine.
to walk out the door? You know, you're gonna have to walk me out January 5th.
I mean, look at the
There's
airlines,
not
for
many
Christ's
of
sake.
me.
What if 2 or 3 other airlines coordinated and they said, yeah, we're not doing that, and people can't travel? What the fuck is going to happen? Or if truckers said, hey, we're going to shut down 20% of all shipping. Fucked.
You're already talking about a minority of people.
Until it's not a minority. And it's
It's-
happened in the
but-
past.
and it's a
That's
death.
how we gained our freedoms.
It is. It's a
We're
death
about
by.
to be
It's
canceled, Fred.
Tony's getting
Kinda
real
give a
worked
fuck.
up over here. Yeah, but even a minority, like when you look at getting toasty. I think it's a key point where you look at even though it's a minority, even if it's 20%, like if you take 20% of the workforce across the nation and they're gone, like that cripples us. Period. Like we're barely
That's
holding
what I'm
on
talking about.
to strands as it is. Like 20%, like that's when you're already running at capacity. 20% breaks it.
Hey, you have to go back to. You have to think about it. What if that's what they want?
So follow that out. Why would they want that?
What's the end goal then?
Yeah,
just for
no,
fun.
no,
Just
no,
for fun.
Just for fun. Entertaining.
Speculation.
It's like off the record speculation.
Yeah, speculation.
We can edit this out.
Yeah, you can.
I want you to keep your job.
Can we pause? No. It's tough because you go back to a lot of what's happening and you're not privy to it. You don't know. You have no idea.
You know,
Oh yeah.
And one of my brother-in-laws, who I hate to say, like, you like to discuss things with people that are open-minded. Most people would call this an echo chamber. I would just call it being open-minded. Now, granted, we're echoing pretty hard on some topics, which is fine because it's true.
do you think it is an echo chamber though?
Yeah.
And I guess in what sense? Because if I didn't agree with something that you said, I'd tell you to fuck right off, and I'd tell you why you're wrong.
You would, but
You just think because of the way we're raised, or we have some aligning thoughts, or
well, you and I have become good friends over a 2-year period.
yeah. But like I said, I'd tell you to fuck right off. If I didn't
Yeah,
like
that
your
doesn't
idea.
necessarily make it. I mean, Tony tells me to fuck off all the time.
Yeah,
This is true. But I want to hear what Jake has
Yeah.
to say on this because he could be on this.
No,
So-
but it is an echo because I wouldn't be here if you didn't like me.
No, you would, because we've invited plenty of people on that we don't fucking like. They
I
didn't
have.
accept that
Okay.
offer. They
That's
didn't
good.
accept that
I have.
offer.
But
I've invited some people multiple times. The same person multiple times.
God, I
But
want to say
that's-
that name out loud.
I know, and that is the point though. They and we and them, they don't want to be in the same room. You want them in here because you want to hear what you want to debate.
No.
No. I just want to understand the thought process.
There you go, man. Like if your idea was different than mine, and I might still not agree with it, like by you explaining it to me, I may better understand why you say that. It doesn't mean that I agree with that, but all of a sudden now I have a different basis for that idea.
You should have told me. I could have started. I could be one of those people.
No, I want you to be
your real
yeah.
thoughts, man.
No. But I'm just saying, like, if you have that genuine curiosity,
Look, dude, the name of this fucking thing is chronic curiosity. It's not fake fucking curiosity.
No, I know, but
like that's what CNN's for.
But the four of us could drink bourbon all night and end the night with like hugs and agreeing with like the way we all view the world. For the most part.
I mean, I think most people can, because we've talked about this. Most people,
no, I know most people cannot.
No, I think when you really strip it down to its core, and this I do believe, when you really strip all of the issues down to their core, what most people just want to be able to go home, take care of their family, live a happy life, love and take care of their loved ones. That's what most people want. You may have different viewpoints, and the way to get there might be different. But why can't we come together and figure out, okay, you want to get there that way, I want to get there this way. Let's figure out a way that we can both do the best we can for what we want to do. And here's my thing, not interfere with each other. The problem comes
that's the paradigm you've built for yourself. And that's why I say we can echo here. Like I knew I wasn't in hostile territory here.
Nobody would be in hostile territory here.
No.
Yeah, but dude,
people don't know that. I do understand. Like people don't know that, and you can tell them that. I mean, if they would listen to it, we're all a little abrasive, right? But if someone knew you, who you are now, they would understand that.
Yeah, for sure.
But people that you have varying, like strong difference of opinions on, they probably don't know you well enough. This would be a very intimidating place.
Oh yeah, no, I get that.
So yeah, so I mean, I get the hesitation, and I do agree about the echo chamber that there's a lot of similarities, even though we're open and able to say I completely disagree with that in a respectful, way. I agree that it's very.
You want to hear what they think to understand that world, but you'll never agree or be a part of that world.
I don't know that that's I don't know that that's true. Exactly. So if they can't convince, so when I think of an echo chamber, I think of something where the same ideas constantly just bounce off the walls. They're these chronic echoes. We align in this similar situation, and that's not what I consider this. Like, are we having an echo chamber right now? Possibly to a degree, because you're not an outlier on those senses. Right. Would I welcome?
We just
the outlier?
happen to agree.
Yeah.
I would absolutely welcome the outlier. Could they convince me to change? Dude, plenty of people have convinced me to change. They said, hey, maybe you're looking at this the wrong way. Like you're being an asshole about this, or you don't have enough information on the subject. And I'm like, well, fuck, inform me. And they do. And then I do my own research and I'm like, well, okay, maybe I don't 100% subscribe to what you said, but there was some validity to your claims. I approach this with what we discussed before, a hermeneutic of suspicion, where you don't take everything at face value. And now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, that makes a little more sense. I either adopt your ideas or I don't adopt your ideas, but I understand a little bit better how you function. And guess what? Now we're closer to one another. Yeah. Now there's a meaningful relationship that's built between two parties that don't agree. But guess what? We breathe the same air. Uh-huh. We consume the same food. We are both Americans, and hopefully at heart we're patriots, and we want to see everyone succeed.
I mean, there's been plenty of times on this show that it may not appear blatantly that my mind's been changed, but it's happened. I think one of the earliest one was, we talked about this a little bit before we started, Rose.
Yeah. Dude, 100%. I remember your questions, and I was like, I'm interested to see how she answers these because I tried to be abuse as a disease versus not a disease.
Yeah,
and you were very camp. Substance abuse is not a disease. That's a conscious choice that you make, and then you fuck up the rest of your life. And you asked her that, and she was like, "Hey."
I tried to word it as nicely as I could.
He did. Very, very, very polite. But yeah, you did it. I was like, "Ooh, sign me up, baby! Like, I want to see what's going to happen here."
Yeah, and so there's been plenty of times, like even here, like I don't want this. Me personally, I don't want me to be like this, but I definitely, even if I have the strongest beliefs personally, I don't want this show to reflect my strongest beliefs. I don't. I want to be able to facilitate curiosity and be able to ask those questions and say why. Like, all right, explain to me. Like, why do you think this or that? Like, they're not even necessarily differencing of opinions, just learning about different people. You know, and
we've done that today though. Like, I'm and like I said, the places that I've been and know and read and think and the world that I live, and that's where we've been talking about it, because I'm like, fuck the details. I'm like, you talk about the Rittenhouse case, like, fuck the details. I'm more interested in this coordination stuff. Like, why?
Oh, dude, you are to an extent, depending on the subject. You've sent me plenty of subjects, so but we're definitely either peer reviewed or meta analysis.
I met in debate.
Okay.
In debate.
I was going to say, either you do get deep in the weeds or you don't. And you just send them to me to get deep in the weeds.
Oh, I'm very deep into the weeds, but that's where I can try to bring back my own formulations. Because let's admit, the most limiting factor of this is words.
Yeah,
like your brain can go
communication,
vocabulary, all of it, and that's why it's like, you keep it simple, because like if we wanted to, we could debate this Rittenhouse thing for an hour.
Well, how can you debate it when the definitions keep changing?
Exactly. But even the Rittenhouse, the Rittenhouse thing, nobody's gonna fucking care, because everybody's already debated it and read about it and done it.
But
and that's where
I do want to get back to you telling Fred that you disagree when he said it doesn't matter what those three guys, what their past history was. And you said it does matter, and Fred said it doesn't. And you said we'll get back to that. So we'll circle back to that, Tony, after.
Calm down, Saki.
Yeah.
And no, that's actually an interesting debate, is does it or doesn't it matter? Because I first learned of some of those guys' histories just the other day. And I was just like.
And so my take on that would be, it does matter depending on what the debate is.
I agree with that. So overall, the case of what they were trying to charge him with, no, it doesn't matter at all.
Right.
Like what they were charging him with, it doesn't. Specifically to your point, when we were talking about, that dude having a gun, I was like, well, shit, that dude's a felon.
If you want to talk about someone illegally with a gun,
that dude shouldn't have a gun. Does it change the fact that he did have a gun and what happened? It doesn't. That's all that I was getting to. So I can understand arguing the law from the standpoint of law and case law. I get that wholeheartedly. Then there's a morality standpoint of these dudes did these. Maybe the McManus brothers were onto something.
Yeah, I would say.
Isn't that the Boondock Saints?
It was. That's maybe their last name. I would say that's a good point, because if I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the survivor that got shot. If it was
the dude that came in second in the quick draw competition,
if he was in Rittenhouse's place, then his past would matter.
Yeah,
because it was illegal to do the thing he was doing, carrying a gun.
Sure.
So then it becomes an illegal thing. So it all depends on, like I said, it all depends on the debate.
Yeah,
the debate you're trying to have.
Yeah, but then you're going in deeper, man. You could get him on this charge, but did he still have the right to defend himself, regardless of whether he was a felon and had the right to own?
And those are all different things that people, they don't want to.
Cassie, it sounds very nuanced.
Yeah, it is. They don't want to separate.
Nuanced.
She hates that word. I think Meta has taken over, though. I think she hates Meta more. But people don't want to separate all of these individual things.
They can exist
and to discuss them. They can all
dualities.
they can all exist all at the same time, and people don't like that.
Yeah.
To me, that, I love that, because you have to argue it point by point by point. And if you can't do that, then just don't argue, because you have nothing.
And that was my only point, is it's really difficult to get away from your own beliefs and biases. And bias is not a word I like to use, but it's true.
Oh, absolutely.
I have a twin brother and my brother-in-law, they've done the devil's advocate stuff, just I think for fun.
That's a great time.
Well, and some people, I think, believe it a little bit, and they want to believe it, because the vaccine thing, the brother-in-law will be like, well, what if they know something about this that we don't? And they care so much about it that's why they're doing it. And my bias is fuck no, they don't. They're lying to us all the time.
Or there are these things called facts.
Yeah.
Presented with some.
But that's the point, is we know we hide our own. Anytime people's trying to promote an agenda or self-interest or anything, you hide certain things, you promote certain things, anything. Even if I'm selling an insurance policy to anybody, it's hard for me to harp on all the negatives and be like, but here's the positives and still win. You can't.
Right.
Because you've
You
really
have to form a narrative.
Yeah, you have to form a narrative, and even in an innocent format. And like the guy whose name's B and G, it's like what
He doesn't even want to say them.
I know.
I get
it's
it.
just like such a
We only used the HC like once.
yeah.
I've used it a few times.
Yeah.
I'm still alive.
Yeah, but we try not to.
Whatever
We try
happens.
not to repeat it.
Yeah.
Like Beetlejuice.
Oh,
You know, you
I'll
don't-
say that motherfucker 3 times and see if that bitch shows up.
And to me, BG is Bowling Green State, Bubblegum State, and it's like, well, maybe it's like in my mind, I'm like, well, nobody who's trying to get a 20-to-1 return on investment has ever got the people at heart to help to
Well, it's
do
like,
better.
Didn't I think Soros said that one point where no, it wasn't Soros. Was it him or was it who's the other?
Any of them.
The other alien.
The other rich.
You can pick any of them.
What's the guy? The big one.
Bezos.
No, the
He's
investor.
There's a lot of those.
The guy that drinks like a 12-pack of Coke every day.
Warren
Buffett.
Yeah, Buffett. Where he's like, it might have been Soros. I think it was. Where he was like,
Although Trump drinks 12-pack of Coke a day.
yeah,
too.
but it was like an investor thing. He was talking about investing in this, that, whatever, and being, responsible to people that, and being a good person. He's like, that's not.
And if
my
you
job.
just so happen to turn a small profit, I
Well,
go
no,
back to the
no,
movie
he-
Wedding Crashers. It's like the shirts for kids or something, and it's like, well, we turn a small profit.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
not totally.
He was
innocent
being
here.
blatant about it. He was like, my job. That's not my job to care about people. My job is to make a profit.
Yeah,
And it was like, so it was just like, and if he's saying that out loud, in his mind, he's thinking, I don't
But-
give a damn about the health of people. Like, I'm here to make money.
but Bubblegum has set up a philanthropy endeavor. So the whole
yes.
point is in
Help people.
philanthropic, helping people.
Yeah. I'm
And-
sure that's why he gave $350 million to CNN
Well, and that's-
and NBC.
And that's where, but that's where the debate comes in because, and I go back to were you there? I don't like, and my twin brother will do this well because he's pretty good at the conformity stuff. It's like, well, were you there? Like, how do you know how Bill Gates feels about this? How do you know he doesn't care about people? It's like, I don't, but like, it's really hard for me not to think he's lying when he goes all weird fingers and he's talking about 20-to-1 return on profits.
Doesn't he have Asperger's or something?
that's
be.
that's a mental thing,
Yeah,
not a physical
that's
thing.
No, you
autistic
can still
thing though.
have, like-
You can be
Does-
weird. Yeah.
Does it have tics with
Yeah, so-
Asperger's?
And that could be.
Things.
That's why I
Which is
said
I
it
think
could
his
be.
speech pattern is a little different. I think it is debated if he has it or not.
Yeah, and
though.
that might be why he
think
smiles
it's-
when he's
yeah.
talking about evil things sometimes. And it's
Oh,
just
that's
like
probably him.
Oh, now how do you know?
the bias comes out.
Is
That's my
Asperger's
point.
synonymous with getting on the Epstein plane?
Yeah.
I didn't read that in the DSMV. I don't know.
Exactly.
So Bill has that too. Then
So it
They
is.
all have that,
Prince
bro.
Andrew.
It's-
And
yeah,
the-
all of them.
all of them.
All of them.
The only reason I'm doing this little like speech is because like I'm in a world where people will question like, how do you not think like this guy who's donated everything to the betterment of humanity? How can you believe that?
It's called a tax break.
I know, but how
I
can
know
you
you
believe that? Yeah, but that's the point. Is like you have to be so careful because it's like as soon as if you mention, like you said, you go into Bill Gates and microchips and magnets and whatever, like you're done.
Yeah.
You're done. And almost to the point like what Rand Paul has done with Dr. Fauci, which I've appreciated because it's like
And it's hilarious.
you can't go all in on anything because you don't know. But like you start asking, and what I talked about like in sales and negotiating, it's like, or if you're delivering a hard message, you stick to the one reason that you have for believing what you believe until somebody can come in the room and prove you dead wrong. And then you can be like, fuck, like that makes a lot of sense. Because if I wanted to let my guard down and I wanted somebody to tell me, like, he's donated billions to philanthropy and helping third world countries.
Or
And
apparently, if you own news stations, you just lie and then it becomes the truth. So
exactly. But if you sat there and somebody was in total belief that this person has dedicated their post capitalistic riches life to making the world a better place, and they don't see what you see, they think you're nuts. They don't believe you, and maybe we are. Maybe you are. I don't know.
Well, see, that's why I tried. I
That's why I like the title of your podcast, because I don't know. I've never talked to the guy.
Yeah.
I never shook his hand. Maybe he is like, maybe he's just got Asperger's, and like if you sit down with him, he's just like the greatest guy you've ever met. I have no idea.
Maybe.
No idea.
Yeah. And that's the outlook I try to take, because I realized, so I spent the vast majority of my life.
No idea.
Yeah. I spent the vast majority of my life
That's your bias.
He's like, he's giving you the look.
My bias is if a dude can't defend himself against a fucking 5-year-old, it's real hard for me to respect that human being.
Or if you don't want to open source things for the betterment of humanity, because they don't have factories that you can just open up, and India's like, we got 4, let's just open them up.
Let's do it.
So I think, but most people aren't going to try to catch them in their own lies. Like you have to dig deep to catch them in their own lies.
Unless you're trolling people like Peter Schiff.
Yeah, I mean,
Schiff's the man.
Yeah, so like that's.
But even his predictions, if you listened to him 12 years ago, you'd be fucking broke.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, according to today's standards, you'd have put all your money in gold and it'd still be at $1,800, and you'd be like, stock market's up,
but it's tangible,
40,000.
bro. You can touch it, you can feel it.
Yeah.
Or that Bitcoin's going to zero, like all that other stuff.
Yeah,
like
obviously, that
unfortunately,
a terrible fucking investment back in 2000.
Well, one of the best investors basically said that, I forget how it goes, but the market insanity can last longer than your the market will last longer than your solvency. Like you can be right for 12 years, but be bankrupted. Because the market was wrong for longer than you could stay solvent.
Yeah. Well, that's when I realized. So I like I said, I spent the vast majority of my entire life like not wanting to look at anything, not caring, because it didn't matter. Like I'm just this one, and plenty of other things. But in the last few years, like I started looking and just putting my curiosity to mental work, like, and looking at all these things. When I told Tony, like when I started looking, I've always wanted to know how the stock market works, because I remember sitting in like 8th grade and they're like, wow, this is way too, what the hell is all this, like ridiculous. And so as soon as I learned about it, it's only been a couple of years, as soon as I learned about it, I realized the stock market has nothing to do with financials. It's based off of and it works with the financial industry. It's all psychology. That's all it is. It's people, because it's that, and there's a little bit of financials into it, but that's all it is. It's all psychology. I mean, the only financial piece of it that would be is when people are like, well, how does the stock market just keep on going up? I don't understand that. Well, it's because inflation, because it's the stock market. All these assets aren't going up. The value of your dollar is just going down. And it's like, when you realize that, it's like, oh, like this is the game these rich people play. Like, and they don't, and it was, I came to this epiphany all on my own some when I was 33 or 34, whatever it was. Like I realized that rich people don't buy paintings and cars and properties because they want all this ridiculous shit. They just want something that's not going to depreciate.
Yeah, store of wealth that appreciates.
Yeah, and I was like, I can't, like I was like
bourbon,
like holy shit, like how did I not know this? Like what was I being taught in school, or not paying attention to in school? Either way, but like,
yeah, but dude, who are your parents too? Like these are the circles of conversations that like middle class and poor people never have. You have to learn that shit when you get in those circles.
But like it hit me, like I was like, oh, this world is not what I thought it was at all.
Yeah.
Like, and it really starts to make sense that like all these people, they're not necessarily have these hidden agendas. They're just agendas they don't talk about.
Well, I graduate. I have a degree in finance, and like once you figure it out, you're kind of like, okay, that makes sense. And they don't teach you like about inflation and how that all kind of really works.
Which is very weird that they don't teach you about that with a finance degree.
No, they teach you about, like you said, fundamentals and corporate earnings per shares, and
which when everything is running according to typical, when everything's running the same for a while, like those things.
Wouldn't you want to get taught how to deal with this stuff when it's fucked up beyond?
I don't think it ever has. And like you said, paintings and cars and stuff. It's not every painting and every car.
No,
it's almost like a club of paintings and cars.
Just Hunter Biden's.
Those will be next.
Yeah.
And you think about, why are they doing it? Well, a lot of that's diversification too. It's no different than owning real estate. When you understand inflation, it's like you buy, even if, all else equal, we buy 10 houses today at $100,000. you'll struggle to slap it together and get renters and pay them off and continue to. Yeah. And my wife and I talked about this the other night. It's like, no, you'll make 4 to 10% on your investment, which is a good number if you're lucky, if you're doing it right.
As long as inflation is under that.
Yes, but the goal is hopefully, like in 10 years, those $100,000 houses will be worth $200,000. And in the meantime, somebody's been paying them off for you.
Until you get fucked on your capital gains.
Until you get fucked on. Yeah, that you have to cash out eventually. But
or wealth income shift to kids. But
or what people are doing today, which I've read about, and it would be no different than if you owned. If you had, and the bigger you go, the bigger the numbers. But there are people who have $100 million in investments and stocks and stuff like that. It's cheaper now for them to cash out and use their holdings as leverage. They get a loan from a bank now for like 1 to 2% interest. They'll go buy an island or whatever at a $50 million loan for 1%, and they won't have to sell. So that's why Congress is talking about taxing unrealized capital gains, which is insane. But you think about it, it's like they're always better at, like,
they're just playing the game.
They're playing the game. They're always better.
They're playing
at
by the rules that were written for them. So
they're getting out in front of it.
Written, they're just adhering to them.
But think about that. So when you talk about the rich getting richer, now the rich are getting richer while they sit around and take loans out for a lower number than inflation, and it's just like they're winning all over.
Yeah, and it all comes back to
I can't
realizing
get one of those loans.
Yeah, but it's realizing that the game. It's realizing the rules of the game, and they've just learned the rules and learned that these are the rules, and how do you maximize the gameplay within the rules, and that's all they've done. And people are all pissed off, like the whole Elon Musk thing. Oh well, you because that's what he does. That's how he's so quote unquote rich, because he's just borrowing off of his assets. It's like, well, sell your money, the biggest thing that cracked me up was, well, if Elon Musk sold, like, was it 10% of his Tesla stocks, that we could solve world hunger.
$6 billion.
And it was $6 billion.
He said, open source accounting.
Yeah, well, and it was like,
send it to me. Let me see.
Yeah, I love it. He did you see that?
Response.
Yeah, I love. It was even. I saw a meme that goes, so they're saying that Elon Musk can solve world hunger with $6 billion. The U.S. has printed like $6 trillion in the last 2 years,
and we're still hungry.
Why are people still hungry? So you realize that you just see, when you know these things. Like, I have trouble now, like
hamburgers at Beeler's for $12 a 4-pack.
That's why you got to get your own cow, bro.
Yeah, but it's hard. Like, do you find it difficult, like, watching the news or watching a headline or looking at something and not just going crazy by going, oh, I see what they mean there?
Well, even in Elon Musk, it's like, do you think he's really just one of us who's so smart and got really rich?
No, he's a super alien.
He could,
and he was born from a rich family, so that helps. And his company would have been totally bankrupted if he didn't have government subsidies. Oh yeah.
And if he didn't, if the SEC ever wanted to prosecute him for all of his shenanigans on Twitter. Like, I mean, think about it.
Oh yeah, he's massively.
Just the guy could have been, he should be in jail just for, like, speculating on Twitter about taking his company private.
Right.
Like, which means the stock's going to get bought out, all that stuff, and it's just like, how does he get away with that?
But I do appreciate when he like, I can't remember I think it was before the split, and his stock, it was like, Tesla stock was like just approaching, like, it was like maybe like 700 or something like that. And he was like, wow, this is way overpriced. Like, he's even like talking shit about his own company stock. And it's like, at least I give him that. Like, he's playing the game.
The funny thing is like, you don't know if he just did that as a favor to somebody who wanted to get in. And they're like, hey, we've got these subsidies that we could pass. Like,
yeah, but it didn't even actually go down all that much.
It might, yeah.
That's what I mean? But like, he might be doing it as a favor.
I just never know why anybody does anything that is stupid when they're so smart.
Yeah, but I think I hope maybe this is me hoping. This is me hoping.
It could be.
This is me hoping that he just doesn't give a fuck. And he's like, whatever, I'm just gonna play around.
I doubt it. If you're one of the richest men in the world now, at least on paper.
But how much shit did he get for smoking weed on that podcast?
None. Did he? Did he
Yeah.
get shit?
You know what I mean? Like, if
he even went on live TV and said, I didn't smoke weed. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. You can see clearly that I have no idea what I'm doing. Everybody's like, all right, whatever. And nobody can. But you got to also wonder.
The event, though, if you're saying, why would a smart person do something like this? Because they're so smart.
Or
if he's so smart, he would have been like, it could have he done it because any news is good news.
And that's why I say, but he could be so smart that he knows that so many people care so little about weed these days that by doing it, he's only fueling, the Tesla retail buyers, the people that are
also
like,
true. And here we are in the runaround of all the different viewpoints.
Of course. That's why I said you only know unless you're there and like the guy and you trust the guy and you've talked to the guy because it's no different and this isn't even political because it's like Joe Biden aside, any of it. It's like the way, and we talked about this. I've even talked about it with my father-in-law. I'm like, the way we got out of Afghanistan makes no sense.
Zero. And
people are like, it's because he's fucking derelict idiot. It's like, yeah, but he's not even making decisions.
Biden didn't make those plans. You think he drew up the plans?
And that's where you go back to like a normal person would have done this. Like, we would have given the weapons to the allies as much as you could. And you would have gotten innocent civilians out first and left soldiers there. And then you would have brought
bring all your diplomats and everybody out first.
You would have pulled the last people that were going to get out were like the people that could fan out and like have their guns pointing towards the airfield as they're walking backwards into an airplane. That would have been logical plan. So you say to yourself, well, why did it had to have been done on purpose. I don't know why, but it was done on purpose for some reason. It wasn't just a mistake. These mistakes don't get made. You cannot make a mistake to that magnitude without it having been done on purpose.
There's an argument to that, and I've heard,
and that's my belief.
Yeah, no, I've heard some arguments against
I wasn't
that.
there. I don't know.
Obviously neither of us were there, but I've heard some arguments against the point of if there's a disconnect between the leadership that is making the plans and the people that are on the ground. Because I've heard some discussions about when they were training some of those Afghan forces that if you're in charge of training those quote unquote soldiers, you want to represent that you're doing a good job. So you report to, your command that, hey, these guys are 70% efficient. Not great, but 70%. And then as the years goes on, the people that come to, after you go, oh, wow, they had 70% efficient. So I got to make it at least 75. These guys don't know what the hell they're doing, but I can't be worse. Like, cause then it's going to be my fault that these guys aren't getting trained properly. And then as the years go on, you get up to this person saying, you know what, these forces are 95% efficiently trained because I can't be fired because I got to do my job. And then the leadership in that is looking at all this paperwork and going, man, these forces, they're 95% trained, because if anybody understands, big corporations, because the military is just a big corporation, those people at the top making the executive decisions, they're not out in the field all the time seeing all of the different things. So
I only disagree with the big corporation standpoint because the minute a big corporation starts losing money, they're done.
Yeah, but the military doesn't have to worry about losing money because but they operate much like a big corporation. The disconnect from the people on the ground and the executive. So the argument, playing devil's advocate would be the people that are making the decisions thought on the ground was taken care of. And the fudged paperwork in between those two is so disconnected that they thought, they even came out and said, they're like, well, we figured it would happen, but not that quick. So you knew that, so you knew this was going to happen. Why didn't you evacuate people properly?
They knew, man. They knew.
Yeah. Either way, it didn't make any sense that let's move all of our military out of there and then just expect the civilians and our diplomats and everybody else to be able to get out safely. Hey, regardless, I don't understand I don't know.
And that's what I said. When you're working for a corporation that doesn't have to make a profit or return, it's like, all bets are off. Like you
Socialism.
have no idea who's doing what and why, and like a lot of it is corruption. But I still stand by the like if you weren't there, you didn't see it, you didn't feel it, you don't know it. It's all you're speculating, and you're just trying to navigate. That's probably how I'll end this podcast. Like that's the way I live my life and philosophy is like I try really hard to just understand it by seeing it or talking to people I trust or knowing what's been done. And it's hard. It's really hard. And like I said, I feel for everybody that is going through this, anybody that going through it, because it's changed so dramatically now. Like it has outpaced my abilities to keep up.
Oh yeah, there's so much information and influx of things that are coming in, and I would agree with you. The same way, that's why I get a lot of weird looks when some of these topics are brought up, because some people know that I'm a toilet warrior like you. I'm in there, I'm doing my research, and I see, and I have so many inputs and information that I have opinions, and I'm almost to the point now where, because I try really hard not to have an opinion. Like that's my goal. Yeah, is to not have an opinion and just look at the information I'm provided, look at the factual things that I can take in, and just kind of see what's going on. But it's right. It's just so hard. There's just so much out there, and I do my best, just to be curious, to be informed. But it's impossible because you don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. I don't even know where Tony went.
That's right. I was to say I gotta take a leak, and I think we ended it.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate you.
We did it. No, I like it.
Thanks for your time.
I said we can get along.
Yeah, we can all get along.
We can all get along. That's the point. You don't know nothing. We got to figure this out. Everybody's got to figure this world out on their own. We're trying. All right.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, sir.
Very nice.
Thank you for joining us today. Remember, check out the website, chronic-curiosity.com, to join us at the forum, have some fun, interaction, pick you up a comfy t-shirt, or if you just want to support the show and donate, all that is on the website as well. Thank you. Until next time. See you.